Mayor Niss, Councilmember Price, Councilmember Scharf, Councilmember Schmidt, and Mayor Shepard. 8 present. Council will be going into a closed session conference with labor negotiators regarding the Palo Alto Police Officers Association and limited hourly employees.
Palo Alto City Council, if I could get the colleagues up to the dais.
Smells nice.
The first item on our agenda, now that we're done from closed session, is agenda changes, additions, and deletions. And I would like to announce that staff is removing item number 12 from the consent calendar. This is the 808 Richardson from consent because the parties have reached an agreement. So I will need a motion to remove that from consent when we get to consent. I would also like to ask right now if we can move up item number 23, which is the voting delegates for the League of Cities Conference next month, as our first item, since this will be quick.
Do you need a motion?
Yeah, I need a motion to go ahead and move this before item number 21, I believe.
So moved.
Before item number 19.
Still so moved.
Okay, and so all those in favor, please vote on the board.
To move up item 23.
Just vote. Yeah. We're moving up item number 23 so we can get that taken care of before the comprehensive plan. And that motion carries. Then I have one more request. Since item 808 Richardson has been removed, we don't have a card for speakers on 808 Richardson yet, but I would like to take up oral communication after the consent calendar. It won't take but a moment longer in case there is somebody that wants to speak on this, not realizing it's been, the appeal is no longer withdrawn and active. So can I have a motion to go ahead and move oral communication to after consent calendar? All those in favor, let's go ahead and vote. And that motion carries. So now we are at City Manager's comments.
Great. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Welcome back from break. I hope everybody had a enjoyable July. I know that I did. I know that it's completely clear to the council, and I'm probably sure for 95% of the public, but just so we are clear, I just did want to state that the council's action in removing this from the consent calendar is removing it from tonight's agenda in total. So it's not.
Mr. City Manager, I do have the comments that you sent out, and I'm happy to read that when we get to consent calendar as we pull it so that the public can understand what the process is and how it's going to play.
So first of all, obviously, we comment that you may have noticed some of the changes in the lobby in here in the council chambers, and it's part of the renovation project that we have going on here. And I'll keep you updated on different changes that we have. I did just want to let you all know that those particular chairs are temporary chairs that we pulled from the conference room, just so that you know, and I'll be working with you on how we move ahead on that. But I think that you'll find a lot of positive things for the ability to work with the public. And I'll talk about a lot of the communications and technology improvements that we'll be making so that more people can stay tuned all across this building to meetings and information, even if they're not able to make it here to the council. I did want to, I will hand this to the mayor, but this honorable mention award in the leading learning category to the Palo Alto City Library, presented by the Urban Libraries Council as one of its 2014 top innovators during the next Libraries Conference back in June in Chicago. This was a panel of expert judges who selected our city library's MakeX Teen mobile makerspace for more than 180 applications from around the country in the 5th Annual Urban Library Council Innovations Initiative. So just another example of another of the great things that are happening here at our city, and there's much more information that can be read on the City of Palo Alto website tonight. Twilight Concert Series. School will be starting soon, but the Twilight Concert Series is still in full swing. Every Saturday night starting at 7 p.m., great bands will be performing at Mitchell Park, including Moon, Alice, Mads, Tolling Quartet, and the highly anticipated Teens on the Green. So we encourage neighbors and families and friends to grab a blanket and head out to Mitchell Park for a picnic and enjoy the slowly waning days of summer. And full information about the series can always be found on the City of Palo Alto website or in the Palo Alto Weekly. The city is currently accepting applications for the Palo Alto Youth Council. The Palo Alto Youth Council, as you know, is a group of 15 to 20 highly dedicated and smart high school students who serve as youth ambassadors to the City Council. Their purpose is to foster better communications and connections between teens and the greater Palo Alto community. And for more information, anyone who is interested or to submit an online application, please go to the cityofpaloalto.org website /teens and click on Teen Leadership. Applications must be submitted by Friday, August 22nd at 5:30 p.m. I did want to advise council that our fire department is supporting the effort to fight multiple large wildland fires in Northern California. A fire engine with 4 firefighters departed Sunday afternoon for the Eureka Arcata area to provide mutual aid to those communities hardest hit by this recent siege of fires. There are 14 large fires burning in Central and Northern California, and a combination, obviously, of drought, stressed forests, hot, dry weather, and recent lightning has created these dangerous conditions. The governor has declared a state of emergency for many counties in Central and Northern California. Mitchell Park Library. I am excited to announce that last Friday, we reached an important milestone in the completion of the Mitchell Park Library and Community Center project, and a temporary certificate of occupancy was issued for the library building, which recognizes that the fire and life safety work needed to make the building safe to occupy has been completed. And starting today, our contractor is moving the remaining furniture into the library, and this Friday, our library staff will begin the process of stocking the book collection onto the shelves. Big D Construction, our replacement contractor, after we terminated our agreement with Flintco, the original contractor, has continued to progress on the long list of corrective work and is nearing the full completion on the project. We expect that construction will be complete in September, as I had told you earlier, and the new library and community center opening to the public in November. I will confirm later this week, but we are working to schedule for the 27th of September in the afternoon, a sneak peek soft opening at the library, along with hopefully some final work we're doing on a celebration of the 50th anniversary of the British invasion in 1964, with a return visit of the Beatles to Palo Alto that evening at the nearby Little League field, somewhat reliving the 1965 event here in California. And that is all I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you. We now have minute approvals. We have approvals for May 12th, May 19th, June 2nd, June 4th, and June 9th. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Let's vote on the board. And the minutes have been approved. I'm sorry, Councilmember Burt is absent for just a little while. He'll be returning. The next item that we have is going to be consent calendar, and we're going to do oral communication after consent calendar in the event anybody does want to speak on the Richardson item that's getting pulled. I'm going to have to ask for the item number 12 to be pulled right now, and I am prepared to read the comments that we received today, just for clarification. So let me go ahead and do why this is being withdrawn. It's the withdrawal of the 808 Richardson appeal. Please be aware that the appellant requested review of the project at 808 Richardson submitted a withdrawal of the appeal Sunday, August 3rd at 10 p.m. Appellant Frank Engel, an emailed message to the project planner states the Yuans, Fuentes, and Ings have reached an amicable compromise on the design for the new house at 808 Richardson Court. The Ingles have therefore abandoned their appeal of the design. I would be grateful if you could ask to have it be removed from the City Council consent calendar for tomorrow, August 4th. The Wands also delivered to you a copy of the signed agreement, and we ask that the changes agreed upon become part of the permit for the house if possible. It appears that all of the immediate affected neighbors have signed off onto the settlement. This is our city attorney, this is our director telling us that due to the appellant's withdrawal of their appeal to this matter, staff has removed it from the consent calendar. The effect of this withdrawal is that the director's decision will stand, subject to staff's review of the revised plans. The city staff will need to review the signed agreement once received and any revised plans that accompany the agreement to ensure that the individual review guidelines were met and there are no new privacy impacts or other critical concerns such as zoning compliance. Following the review, any revised plans would be posted on the city's website. Staff would determine whether a simple revision of the director's approval letter would be sufficient to finalize this entitlement. On the other hand, if the plan changes are significant, the revised project would go through the IR revision process. Can I have a motion to remove this from consent?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and vote on the board for item number 12. Then I also have one speaker for item number 4. So before we take up on consent, we'll have one speaker, and our speaker is Emily Remsel, and you will have 3 minutes.
Glad to hear that. I tried to time it for 2, so I should be able to go. Mayor Shepherd and council members, I support the city auditor's excellent refuse fund audit. Tonight I will address her recommendations on the rate stabilization reserve and sector imbalances. The city's policy is to maintain a rate stabilization reserve of 15% to 30% of the operating budget for the refuse enterprise fund. This would be plus $3 million to $6 million. Staff report number 2409 in March 2012 acknowledged that there was a negative reserve, a true oxymoron. At that time, there were also sector imbalances between the commercial sector and the residential sector, with the commercial sector paying far more than its share of refuse costs and the residential sector paying far less. This is a violation of the substantive policy of Proposition 218. Staff recommended that a commercial reserve be established and some pretty hefty residential rate increases over 3 years. This recommendation was not followed. The auditor recommends that this issue be revisited, and I agree. The commercial $1.3 million excess revenue over expenses was instead added to the refuse rate stabilization reserve, which, quote, improved, unquote, from minus $4.1 million to minus $2.8 million. What does it mean to you when your savings account has a minus balance? There's nothing there. Meanwhile, some of you are pushing staff to move full speed forward with a very expensive aerobic composting operation which produces no energy and instead consumes a great deal of energy. It will require a swap of the refuse fund's valuable Los Altos treatment plant property for the very limited compost facility, which will produce no income. It will also require the issuance of a $10 million bond. It will replace a landscaped habitat corridor with a giant white fabric Quonset hut. And by adding 5% residential food scraps to the yard trimmings, it increases the cost from about $32 a ton to $77 a ton for the combined food yard trimmings mix. That means that 95% of the material more than doubles in price. This makes no sense at all, given the sorry state of the refuse fund's finances with a negative reserve and a huge Proposition 218 imbalance. Thank you.
Thank you. And there's no more cards on consent calendar, so I guess I'm looking for a motion.
So moved. Excuse me.
The Vice Mayor moves the consent calendar. Can I have a second? Thank you. Councilmember Berman seconds it. Let's go ahead and vote. Okay, that passed unanimously with Councilmember Burt absent. And now we're going to go ahead and enter into our oral communication, of which I have 12 speakers on oral communication, and at this point they're indicating all the same topics. So I'm going to reduce the time by just 1 minute and ask that we speak for 2 minutes. So, and I will call out people's names a couple at a time, so if you could also help by being alert to come down at that time. And our first speaker will be Ken Horowitz, to be followed by Jim Fitz.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. And Mrs. Mayor, sorry. Ken Horowitz, I'm a resident of Palo Alto. I'm very passionate about the topic tonight, and we come before you because you may have heard that the Page Mill YMCA is closing October 1st. We only have 7 weeks to make things happen. I'm very passionate about this. It's about age discrimination. It's about the safety of our school children that'll be impacted when all the traffic goes on to Ross Road during the school times. I'd like to allow some of my time to Mark Duncan, and he'll give you further.
I'm sorry, can he fill out a card?
He filled out a card, but
So
he's a
we
little
will
bit-
just stay with the card procedure. That's our process for oral communication. So if your comments are complete, then we can move on to Jim Fitz.
Okay, well, we'll save Mark for the end then. People in the audience here are people that belong to the Y. As you can see, quite a diverse group of people. This is a senior Y. 25% or more of Palo Alto residents are seniors over the age of 60. And so what we're asking tonight is that you understand how much passion and caring we have for this Page Mill Y, and we're asking you to use whatever influences with your community partners, your business organizations, whomever, to keep the Page Mill Y open. And I have a letter that I'd like you to read at your leisure, which addresses all of these concerns. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And just so you know, a group of 5 can have 10 minutes to speak. So if you wanted to do that, we could take a look at that. The next speaker is Jim Fitz, to be followed by Jessica Roth.
Hi, how are you? I'm Jim, and I use the Y Page Mill primarily for a Parkinson class, which is very good and very concise and very good teaching. We probably have 20 people in the class per day. It's 3 times a week. I don't use it that much, 3 times, maybe once a week. When I've been there, used the facility, their facilities are clean. All the facilities work. The whirlpool, sauna, and showers are in good shape. When they're not, they fix them. And it's a good place for 60-plus age group to go to. And they utilize their space very well. I've been in a bunch of Ys all over the country, and for the size of this place, it's as good as any of them. Thanks.
Thank you. Jessica Roth, to be followed by Harvey Miller.
Hello, I actually am not speaking on behalf of the Y tonight.
Oh, no, you're not. I'm so sorry.
Not a worry. Mayor Shepherd, council members, thank you for your time tonight. I am here to talk about California Avenue. I am very passionate about California Avenue, as many of you know. It's a place that I've grown up on the street. I'm a fourth-generation business owner, and very proud of that as well. I lived in College Terrace for 10 years and have many of my friends that live in College Terrace and in the nearby neighborhoods. I am here tonight to ask you to work with us to save the small businesses on California Avenue and keep its charm. I feel strongly that we have many great places in Palo Alto that can offer space to chains and big corporate businesses, and I would like to zone California Avenue to be independently owned and operated businesses only. There, of course, are some businesses there that we wouldn't want to make anybody leave, but moving forward with all the changes that are happening on our street, I feel it's going to become a very desirable location, and chains that had maybe overlooked it before are now going to be interested in it, and I don't want California Avenue to change. So I know that it's something that would take a lot of work, but with all of your help, I feel that we can really keep California Avenue independently owned and operated. Thank you.
Thank you. Harvey Miller, to be followed by Nisa Carter.
Thanks for giving us a platform for letting people know how important and irreplaceable is the Page Mill Y. As you've heard, it's kind of ironic that the officers enabled this institution that has classes, for example, for to support Parkinson's and diabetic patients. People who are in remission from cancer. And then there's an old codgers class as well. I'm not in that, though I qualify. And at 91. And part of the reason I'm not in it really gets to the diagnosis I got from a cardiologist at Stanford, Drs. Gomeri and Haddad, who told me that my heart is that of a 40-year-old. And for that I really attribute programs at the Y, the body pump class especially. Some of you may be familiar with that. So the important thing is, I think, that the financial constraints, the old facility that requires a lot of money for renewal, these are challenges that I think could be met by the community if more people knew of how invaluable 1,400 people are official members, but there are hundreds more who come, and people who come to the city to stay in hotels, for example. I know people at the Page Mill Y who work at Intel and Synopsys and Google, who have, and Stanford for that matter, who have available other facilities, but they come to the Page Mill Y because it's superior, the classes, the programs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nisa Carter, to be followed by Randall Strickenden.
This is Nisa Carr. We're actually deferring our time to Mark Duncan as our
Actually, people, you know,
So, sorry.
5 people can get together and then you have 10 minutes to speak, but the other order is you do need to speak with your card, and so everybody is getting 2 minutes this evening.
But if there are 5 people that want to dedicate theirs.
Right, that's what I'm saying. If you want the clerk to organize 5 people that might want to have them speak for longer than 2 minutes, we can do that by having 5 of the group look through and see who would like to go ahead and have one speaker speak on their behalf. So if you want to be one of the first 5, maybe we can get 5 people to just not speak, and then I'll count you. So Nisa Carter, I'll put you over here as one of the 5, and maybe some others, if you could give me your names.
And then Randall Strickfaden was after me.
Hang on, let me find your name. Bill, did you put a card in? Okay. Do you have the card? I do not see a card for you at this point. But please fill one out or work with the clerk right here on this.
But we'll tally. I mean, let's tally
Yeah,
this one.
let's go ahead.
Randall Strickfaden, I yield my
sorry.
time as well. Randall Strickfaden, I yield my time as well.
You want to yield your time? So we've got 3 people.
4, including this gentleman. And the guys.
And the speaker. I'm sorry, your name, sir? Marty, is it? Mark Duncan. Okay, so that's 4. I need 1 more. And your name, please? Gigi. Okay, Gigi. So I'm going to go through, and would you, now you have preference, and would you like to have your time now, or would you like to have the time at the end? I'm just going to be a little flexible here. Okay. In that case, we're going to go to Debbie Duncan, to be followed by John Keller. These are the...
Sometimes a gym is more than a place to work out. Mine, the Page Mill YMCA, is a mile down the hill from my house in a far from fancy facility in the basement of a Palo Alto office building. This low-cost gym has developed quite a community in its 35 years, hosting everything from racquetball tournaments to classes for those with Parkinson's or recovering from cancer treatment, as well as TRX, spin, Zumba, Tai Chi, yoga, etc. The teachers are terrific. Members have donated generously to YMCA summer camps in underserved communities, food and backpack drives, and the like. They formed lunch and dinner groups. At least a quarter of the members are 65 or older. I've made friends of all ages, and my 6 o'clock a.m. Bust Our Buns total body resistance workout. It's a sort of exercise the lead Alzheimer's researcher at Stanford has said can improve cognitive function. Unfortunately, this facility is set to close October 1st. The first time members were informed that the gym's future was in any jeopardy came in a June 24th letter. The wise reasons for the closure, which are changing weekly, have raised suspicions and hackles. Thousands of comments have been posted on local news sites. Hundreds, mostly older people, showed up for a dinner time meeting at a Palo Alto church to hear from Silicon Valley Y executives and for them to hear from us. Managers still say the decision is irreversible, but that hasn't stopped members from forming a Save the Gym task force and coming up with creative ways to continue operating. We'd like your help in that. This is Silicon Valley, after all. We baby boomers are getting up there in age. We want to need a reasonably priced gym for our physical, mental, and social well-being, one we don't have to commute more than half an hour to get to. The entire community loses when the needs of any sector are ignored. This will be on KQED radio tomorrow morning.
Thank you. And we do have also a policy that we stay neutral in the council chambers for the Commons. John Keller, to be followed by John Malloy.
Thank you. I'm John Keller. I am a Palo Alto resident, and I've been a member of the Page Mill Y for quite a few years. I joined specifically at my doctor's instructions. I weighed nearly 100 pounds more than I weigh today, and he said I wasn't going to live that much longer. And through the programs of the Y that I'm standing here before you today in much better health. But I also would like to mention my father, Walter Keller, a World War II veteran, and 95 years old, and he's been a Palo Alto resident for 60 plus years. He goes to the Y every day. It makes his day. It's kept him healthy. He walks without cane or any type of walker or anything. And without the Page Mill Y, I'm not sure if my dad would still be living. So I just think I'd like you all to consider if there's any way possible that you could help to keep it open. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And again, if you could hold your applause, this is the Commons here. And John Malloy, to be followed by Paul Doran.
Good evening. My name is John Malloy, and thank you for your service. We come to you because we know you care about social policy, and we're faced with a Silicon Valley YMCA board that is absolutely shocking how they've dismissed at least 3,000 members of the community. We wanted you to know it. Maybe you don't have the authority to do anything, but just knowing it's good for something, and in your position, you took those positions to be of service. We look to you and we look to the history of the city council that you do care when a decision's made that affects a mass of people. And it's not just adult people. The people here mentor the generations that follow. The people who end up at the YMCA, many are from not from generations, they're immigrants, that sort of thing. So I was shocked when I went to a meeting of over 300 people and the organizing board was so dismissive of elders, dismissive of the younger voices in the audience, dismissive of people who were on the board before. So I wanted to report that to you because we appeal to you to bring integrity to this process. It's not too late to back up, bring all parties together. We're fortunate we have a landlord that wants it to work. So at this point, it appears just a small group of people are, for some unknown reason, trying to switch the organization as it's been historically. We don't understand that. Maybe some of your representatives can bring some truth to the process. And thank you in your busy day and your busy schedule and all that you have to do to just slow things down, bring a little integrity. I've always been able to take a loss if it was fair. So if you just make a fair playing field, we greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul Duran, to be followed by Marty Smith.
Yes, thank you. I'm impressed. You actually pronounced my name halfway decent. That's a first. I think I'll come back and darken your doorstep. I took my glasses off so I couldn't see you all. I get nervous. I'll speak from the heart because my mind is feeble. I'm disabled now. I grew up in this community, rich in heritage. Where the Y is now, my best friend, his father used to raise pigs down at the farm. And I've been a member of the Y for 27 years. Everybody that spoke, has spoken and will speak, I look upon as family. You see them in the store, and it's a very special community. The way this bomb was dropped on us is totally unethical, with no time to fight it, and that's why we're here appealing to you, good people, that you may be able to do something to save the whale, the Y, whatever we're saving. Very special place. My wife got stage 4 ovarian cancer the day before my last chemo, and she and I have both benefited from the Living Strong, Living Well. As people had mentioned, it's life-saving. I've been to all the Ys. I helped build the one at El Camino Hospital prior to getting disabled, but I choose this Y. It's one of the last hot tubs in which we congregate and share ideas as a community in Palo Alto. But, you know, there's not enough time to say everything other than that. This is wrong to close this Y. They left us with a crisis in such short period of time in which to save the Y. This is not necessary. It's not a natural death. It's more of a murder of a very special part of my hometown, Palo Alto. I come in 100 miles. I'm couch surfing now due to the restrictions of cancer and what's occurred in my life. We've lost everything. We're going to buy homes. Now we've lost everything. So I come in to tend to the wife, and short of having the Y, I don't know how I'll be able to do that, Ross Road or otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you. Marty Smith, to be followed by Mark Duncan.
Hi, I'm Marty Smith, and I've been a member of the Y for just almost 2 years. One of the more recent members. And the first thing that strikes you when you go to the Y is just the staggering sense of community. How many people have been there for so many years? I've been in the real estate business 35 years, and I remember when Page Mill was brand new. And I remember the decision that the city council made to have the YMCA be part of the community a facility for that, and it was considered brilliant at the time. I mean, it was a perfect thing to put in there. And I think history over the last 35 years has proven that to be the case if you look at the kind of people and the kind of community that's been created. And I'm hoping that this city council can make a decision that history will say was another brilliant decision and keep it open. Thanks.
Thank you. Mark Duncan, you have 10 minutes. Welcome. And thank you for being patient with getting this taken care of.
Well, in truth, I only am prepared to speak for 2 minutes. You know, I've been attending athletic facilities all over the area. I have used the San Mateo, the Mountain View, the Ross Road, you know, the Page Mill, and yet I continue to come back to the Page Mill. And, you know, in part, you know, I'm not, getting around isn't as easy as it used to be, but it really, being small and compact, and the 3,000 members, you know, I've gotten to know a lot of the people. It's a, you know, big part of my social life. And, you know, I want to say that, you know, 35 years ago, when, you know, they wanted to add on that 100,000 feet, you know, for Palo Alto Square, and as part of the mitigated EIR, you know, they said, hey, you need to have some residential housing on the top of that. And it was a big experiment, and it was sort of casually mentioned, and a athletic facility not to exceed 15,000 square feet. And that really has worked out very well. You know, the only other athletic facility at the time was the Elks Club, and now, you know, we have other facilities, but, you know, the working population of the city has, you know, grown tremendously, and most of the athletic facilities in the area are, you know, at capacity. So one of the unique things about the Palo Alto Y is it really does an excellent job of serving the people that are disabled and seniors, unlike many of the other facilities that really focus more on the younger, you know, population. So I think it would be a tremendous loss to the city of Palo Alto to lose the Page Mill facilities. So I suspect that if you were to direct the staff to examine the usage of the traffic and parking around Ross Road, you might find that if the usage were to expand, you know, dramatic at all, that you might expect from even a portion of the 3,000 members, that it would, you know, greatly increase the parking and traffic problems in that area, which has a lot of, you know, schools. I think that, you know, you kind of say, you know, what else could the city, you know, do here? I mean, what are the actions that you could take? I mean, other than saying, hey, that's terrible. And I think the other thing is that I think it's something that the Planning Commission could say, look, as part of the mitigated EIR, we really feel that having an athletic facility there has worked out very well, and we'd like to have that continue. We don't think that putting a hotel or a restaurant or many of the other things that were specified as options are really something that meets the, you know, community needs of a planned community. Something that would really help us is for the city of Palo Alto to say to the Silicon Valley YMCA, look, you have a mailing list of all the members in the Page Mill Y. Would you, on a weekly basis, forward to all the members the efforts to have a new organization take that over? And I guess the and the last point would be to get the Silicon Valley YMCA to share under NDA the precise financials and membership and various programs and efforts that they have taken over the past 3 years. Because if you're going to bring on a new outfit, that's really essential to doing a business plan. I really appreciate your having taken the time to listen to all this. We are passionate, about this, but we really could use a little bit of help. And whatever you choose to direct staff or direct perhaps a letter to the Silicon Valley YMCA would be most appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have no more cards for oral communication. Let me see.
I think there's another lady that wanted to speak.
That's what I'm seeing. Paul, we need to have a card if anybody else wants to speak. Okay. I'll send the clerk out to you. And so, and just while we're taking this moment, since this is not on our agenda, it has not been posted, council is not able to respond or take this up.
She can fill it out after she talks.
And she can fill it out after she speaks, Paul, if she'd like to. Okay, so it's Eva, okay.
What'd he say?
Welcome, Eva. Could you please say your name?
Welcome to you.
Thank you.
Who's the chair? Anyway, to the city council, my name is Eva Zerker. I'm coming to speak for the Y, to be in its location in Palo Alto. And I am probably the oldest member, not only here, but also at the Y. I'm in my 90s. And the reason I'm in my 90s is because I've gone to the Y for like over 20 years. So that's the first thing I want to say, is that I'm alive because of the Y. Of course, my husband first, but then the Y. It has literally, when we got back from Europe, my blood pressure was through the roof. That was over 20 years ago, 30 years almost, or more. And my doctor says, you have to exercise because my background is dance, and you're not doing any of that. Go to the Y. I asked, where do I do it? She said, to the Y. Well, I'm now a staple of the Y. I mean, they can't get along without me.
You got a little bit of time left, honey. A little bit of time. That's what we yell about.
Oh, is that some of them? I'm here for purposes that it's not just me, but it's all those other people that they take class there who have all kinds of illnesses that can't walk and all that, and it makes your heart feel good. Just bring in the whole damn city, and they see how many classes there are and how they're benefiting from it. Thank you very much.
Okay. And we now have one more speaker, Janice you're going to have to help me, Janice, sorry. Sutphin? Thank you.
Hi. I wasn't planning to speak, but since there's a little time left, I thought, yep, I'm a little taller than Ava. I've been going to the Page Mill Y for almost 4 years. I'm a retired psychologist, and like everyone says, there's no other place like it. It is so special. The people are so special. I talked to people who wrote policy with Reagan, wrote policy with Clinton. It's an incredible group, and everyone loves going there just for the conversation. I myself go to about 10 classes a week, and I've got like 15 more pounds of muscle than I had 4 years ago. And it's something I'm planning on doing forever. If it closes, I don't know where I will go because it takes me 15 minutes from Menlo Park. Every place else is too big or too crowded or don't have the kind of classes they offer at the Page Mill. You probably are aware of all the issues we've gone through with Silicon Valley, including repairs that actually are much less than they thought they needed to do. They cost less. We are prepared to raise any kind of money. This group here is willing to put their own money in, just as we have for all the other Ys, so we can save this Y. And if you can help us get that opportunity, we will do it, and we can do it. It's just that Silicon Valley won't allow us to do it. We're ready to go with any kind of fundraising measures that need to take place. We're 25% of the population over 60 at this point. In your own white paper that you commissioned a few years ago, in 2 decades, we're going to be 40% of the population in this area. And you said yourselves, we need to support services for seniors, and you've got a perfect one now, and let's just continue with it.
Thank you. And the city manager would like to make some comments.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just very quickly, you know, we certainly have a lot of communities in Palo Alto, but this is an amazing demonstration of a community, and I just wanted to say that the staff has heard what has been said. I don't want to overpromise, but I want to inform the council that I will huddle with some of our key staff and begin to sort of talk about are there any possibilities for us as a city. I'll reach out to some of the leadership here, and we'll see if we can't get a lot more information and be able to report to the council on what possibilities might be possible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for coming. Really appreciate it. We're going to move on to our action items for this evening. And we have moved item number 23 forward. So we'll be taking up item number 23 right now, which is the appointment of voting delegate to the League of California Cities Annual 2014 Conference. Do you want to, we'll give them a few minutes to move out to the lobby. I've already got it. I'm going to make it. Oh, perfect.
Dennis Burns, talking with the Palo Alto Police Officers Association, dealing with public servants who are on an hourly wage. They also met with the Limited Hourly Employees Group. They have come back. We've had a report by James Keene.
Group in the back, wouldn't mind going out to the lobby. That way we can have a little more quiet in chambers. But so right now we're going to be taking up item number 23 first, and this is for the appointment of voting delegate to the League of California Cities Annual 2014 Conference. And Councilmember Scharf, you have the floor.
I'll just move that our mayor be the voting delegate.
And you will be the alternate.
And I will be the alternate.
Okay, I'll second that. And do you have anything you would like to speak to on this? Okay, I'm just going to say that you and I are the only ones that are registered to go down. So it only makes sense to have us in this order. So with that, Councilmember Schmidt.
Yeah, I take it that the issues that will be voted on will come back to the council before the meeting?
That is scheduled in a couple of weeks, yes.
Yeah.
It's on the tentative agenda. I don't think we have them yet either. All right, let's go ahead and vote. And that motion carries unanimously. Now moving on to item number 19, the TEFRA public hearing. Tonight we will be conducting a public hearing to facilitate the issuance of revenue bonds by the California Municipal Finance Authority for the Stanford Affordable Apartments project at 2450, 2470, and 2500 El Camino Real on behalf of the borrower, Palo Alto ECR Partners, LP. Is there a staff report on this item?
Yeah, just a quick few remarks.
Okay,
Mayor.
I will open the public hearing after the staff report. Go ahead, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor, council members. You're all familiar by now with TEFRA hearings, and the reason we're having this is in order to issue tax-exempt bonds. The IRS requires a hearing in the jurisdiction in which this project will be built. This project is...
Can you put the mic? Yeah, thank you.
Sure. This project is to build the Stanford Apartments, affordable apartments located on El Camino. And this is, my understanding is this is part of the development agreement This is land that Stanford owns, but is granted a long-term lease to the related companies of California that will be doing the project. Again, as you all know, the city bears no financial, legal, or moral responsibility for this project. And there are representatives from the conduit agency issuing the bond and also from the related companies here in case you have any questions. With that, I conclude.
Okay. I'm going to ask the clerk if we have any cards. Oh, I'm going to open the public hearing and ask the clerk if we have any cards, which we do not have any cards on. So I will now close the public hearing, and I will entertain a motion to adopt a resolution, Attachment A, approving the issuance of the bonds by the CMFA for the benefit of the Palo Alto ECR Partners LP.
Second.
Thank you. That was Councilmember Scharf, followed by Vice Mayor Niss with that motion. If there any reason you would like to speak to this, then let's go ahead and vote. And that motion carries unanimously. Our next item is another public hearing on weed abatement. Got them all tonight. This is item number 20. This is the time and the place set for the public hearing on a resolution confirming the county weed abatement report for Palo Alto and ordering cost of abatement to be a special assessment on the respective properties description in the resolution. Is there a staff report on this?
No, there is not. I do have staff here if it's necessary to get in and answer any questions.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. And do I have any cards on this? Which I do not. So I will now close the public hearing and ask for a motion.
So moved.
Hang on just a second. Let the record show that the I have to read my notes on this, so sorry. I don't know, do I need, let the record show that so many people appeared or filed written objections against these weed abatement proceedings, and that any resolution passed by the council on this matter will reflect these findings, of which there were none. So I will now entertain a motion to adopt the resolution overruling objection, excuse me, there are no objections, so I don't have to have that. See, this is new language that the city attorney gave me. So now I am asking for a motion to move the order.
So moved.
Second.
And Councilmember Scharf has his light on, so I'm going to give you the floor.
I just have a question on the weed abatement. So we do this every year. This is, I think, the 5th year we've done this that I've been on council. And I noticed that there's sometimes the same people's names on it every year. And I'm just wondering if we have a process where we do something about that, or is it that they just let the weeds grow, we go in and cut them down, and then every year they come back and do the same thing?
Thank you, Councilmember Scharf. Sometimes our code enforcement team may be working with a particular property on a number of issues. I cannot make representations as to the totality of the list there and what the status is, but this is essentially the process for the weed issue if folks are not taking the care that they need to maintain their properties in a safe way. This is why we do this, to notify them that the city will take care of it and bill them.
Okay, thank you.
In that case, I'm going to go ahead and call for the vote. And that motion carries unanimously. So we are now here for item number 21. This is the public hearing on the comprehensive plan update and scoping session. Tonight we will be taking up the public scoping meeting phase of the program level report staff is preparing for the environmental impact study of the comprehensive plan update. This meeting follows the council-approved schedule, which endorsed a robust public process and commission review. After the public hearing, council has 3 options. 1, direct staff to prepare an EIR analysis based on the 4 future scenarios described in the staff report. 2, suggest modifications or refinements to the 4 scenarios. Or 3, request additional information to better define the scenarios and come back to council for approval. We also can launch all 4 or a few at a time. The 4 alternative concepts before us in the staff report would generate changes to the draft policy documents Council reviewed earlier this year. These scenarios are: 1, do nothing, business as usual, which we can actually launch tonight if we want to without any discussion because it is required by law. 2, slow growth and no changes in land use designations. 3, slow growth and adjust the location of housing sites. And 4, net zero concepts. After the staff report, I will allow council members to ask questions related to the update process only, and then open the public hearing, in case there's any confusion with where we are at this moment in time with the EIR and the update to the comprehensive plan. So, and then open the public hearing to accept public testimony, and then keep that public hearing open until Wednesday evening when we take up the item again at 7 p.m. Unless we decide continuing it is not necessary tonight. Also, we will be taking up new testimony on Wednesday, so there will be a chance for anybody who could not be here tonight to address the council on this item. After we hear from the public, I'd like to hold a round of questions limited to the scenarios. Then I'd like to hold our council deliberations on these scenarios until Wednesday night for approval. At that time, the public will once again be allowed to speak on the subject before we close the public hearing. Are there any questions from colleagues regarding the process? Okay, in that case, let's turn it over to staff for the report.
Good evening, Mayor Shepherd, members of the council. I'm Hillary Gittleman, the planning director, and I'm joined by Andrew Hill from our consultants, Placeworks. We both have supporting members of our team in the audience as well. And we've had the pleasure this summer of meeting with citizens of Palo Alto to talk about their vision for Palo Alto in 2030. We found people were hungry to do this. We had a series of 3 workshops that Andrew is going to summarize for you. And folks really wanted to give us the benefit of their thoughts, and were receptive to the idea, I think, of analyzing several alternative futures so the council can compare their impacts and benefits starting in early 2015, and so that we can ultimately maximize the council's ability to mix and match the best features of these alternative futures. So Andrew's going to summarize the EIR process we're embarking on, our community engagement efforts to date, and the 4 scenarios we're hoping for public and council input on this evening. We're hoping that you'll allow us to give the presentation. We can answer any questions from the council and receive the public comment tonight. At that point, we can evaluate whether to continue with council comments and direction or continue this to Wednesday evening as indicated on the agenda. Andrew?
Thank you, Hillary, and thank you for the opportunity to make this presentation tonight. Let me start, first of all, with the goals for tonight's discussion. This hearing is an opportunity for us to update City Council on the public engagement for the comp plan update so far. It's also an opportunity to accept public testimony on the range of issues and alternatives to consider as part of the environmental review for the comp plan update. And we're hoping that it will be an opportunity either tonight or on Wednesday to receive feedback from City Council, including direction either to begin the EIR analysis or direction with regard to specific information needed to refine the alternatives, the draft concepts for the alternatives that have been included in your packet tonight. So as Hillary mentioned, my presentation tonight has 2 parts. The first part is an overview of the environmental review process for the comp plan update. And the second part is a recap of public engagement so far that has led to the development of these 4 preliminary draft alternatives that you have before you. In terms of the environmental review for the comp plan, let me quickly run through. We will be preparing an EIR, that is an environmental impact report, and I'd like to quickly run through the content, the purpose, the timeline for environmental review, as well as taking a minute to explain the difference between a programmatic EIR and a project level EIR, and to run down the broad topics that will be covered as part of the environmental analysis. So the EIR itself, the purpose of that document is to provide information to the public and decision makers about the nature of the comp plan update itself, and also to disclose the potential impacts of implementing that updated plan, and to provide details of the mitigation measures that are available to reduce or avoid impacts that could result from implementing the plan. Another very important part of the environmental review process is to provide an opportunity for public input. And as I run through the timeline for environmental review, I'll be highlighting all the opportunities that there are at well-defined points in the process for the public to weigh in. So all of this information really, as part of the environmental review process, is meant to support the decision ultimately on adopting the comprehensive plan. In terms of the timeline for the EIR and the environmental review process, we anticipate that it will take approximately 18 months. The clock has already started ticking. It started on May 30th with the release of a Notice of Preparation, the NOP. That is a form that officially announces to public agencies and the general public that an EIR will be prepared, and it sets a specific period in which comments as to the scope and content of the EIR, that is, the range of issues and alternatives to consider as part of the EIR process. For public agencies, that scoping period closed on June 30th. For the general public, we've allowed a longer period of time, and this meeting tonight, together with the PTC meeting on July 9th, is an opportunity, is part of that process, that scoping period, an opportunity for members of the public to weigh in on the range of issues and alternatives to consider. And so the type of input that we're looking for in terms of comments on the CEQA document are really information about the range of environmental issues to consider. So for example, if a member of the public has concerns about traffic impacts at a particular intersection, we want to hear about that. We want to hear about potential areas of the city that are prone to flooding. This is the type of information that we're looking to hear in terms of contents on the scope and the content of the EIR. Once we have completed this scoping period and we've heard the full range of comments on the issues and alternatives to consider, then the detailed work of analyzing the impacts of the plan and its alternatives will begin. That is due to happen between August and December of this year. The draft EIR will be released at the end of this year, and it'll be open for public review in early 2015. This graphic is an illustration of the same process that I've just described in graphic format, and it also denotes the points for public opportunity, public comment, opportunities for public comment. For example, the scoping period, which you can see on the left, is the period which we're in right now, and will be an opportunity for the public and agencies to weigh on the range of issues and alternatives to consider. In the center, the longest period of public comment has to do, comes about when the draft EIR itself is on the street and available for full review. What's unique about this particular process is that actually several alternatives will be analyzed in detail, and the public will be able to really see the pros and cons of each of those alternatives, and that will aid in the process of selecting a preferred alternative for the comprehensive plan. On the basis of all that public input, we'll be moving towards the selection of a preferred alternative. When that, and at that stage, we'll be able to draft a full version of the comprehensive plan for review. And there will be as well, before the final plan is adopted, opportunity for PTC review and recommendation, and then finally, council would review the final EIR and make a decision on adopting the plan itself. So let me take a minute now to explain what we will be doing in terms of a programmatic EIR, because that's the type of document that we will be preparing for the comprehensive plan update. And because the comp plan is really a policy document that is applicable to the entire area of the city, it's different from what you would do in the case of a particular development project. When a developer comes forward with a proposal, it's quite site-specific, and the level of information that you have is very detailed. The developer will know which parcels of the city are being proposed for development. They will have specific information about the positioning of the buildings on the site. They'll know the height of the buildings. They'll know where the parking goes, and where trees will be added or removed. So there's there's a lot of detail available for the environmental analysis in the case of a particular development project. However, in the case of the comp plan, we don't have that parcel by parcel information about what development would look like. What we're dealing with is a much more conceptual level of information. We understand roughly in what areas of the city development would take place and what generally the character of that development would be like, but we can't do the very specific level of analysis that we would for a particular project. We can, however, do quantified analysis in terms of traffic impacts and air quality and greenhouse gas emissions, and so we do have that. And also, we would be able to identify and propose mitigations for cumulative impacts that consider development not only in Palo Alto but in the surrounding region. So what we're doing is a much more conceptual level of environmental review with a programmatic document. In either case, however, whether you do a project EIR or a programmatic EIR, the broad categories required for analysis under CEQA are the same. You can see all 16 of them outlined here. So that, in a nutshell, is the environmental outline of the environmental review process. I'd like to move on to the second portion of my presentation now, which has to do with a recap of the public engagement process so far that has led to the development of 4 draft preliminary concepts for alternatives to analyze in the EIR. So we held a series of 3 scoping meetings between May and June of this year, and I'll run through quickly each of these meetings because they built on one another and led up to the creation of these draft alternative concepts. The first meeting was held on May 29th at Avenidas, and it was the topic was critical issues. And participants broke into small groups and performed a SWOT analysis to analyze the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for Palo Alto. We had about 40 attendees. There were about 6 different groups, and there were some common themes that definitely emerged from the discussion. People very much valued the quality of life here in Palo Alto, and they recognized that the unique relationship with Stanford is potentially an opportunity to build on. There were concerns about traffic congestion, public trust, the need to engage citizens meaningfully in civic life, and also concerns for the high cost of housing here in Palo Alto. At the same time, interestingly, Caltrain electrification and high-speed rail was considered both a threat and potentially an opportunity. In parallel, and following on from this first public meeting, we launched an online engagement activity, an online SWOT tool, so that people who were not able to attend the public meeting were also able to interact with the same ideas and provide input. It was available in Open City Hall, accessible either through the project website or through the city's website, and people were able to prioritize a list of strengths a list of weaknesses, a list of opportunities, a list of threats. The ideas online had all been generated by community members at the first meeting. People were able to prioritize those lists and also suggest other ideas if they didn't see their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats represented. We had very good participation rate in this. In addition to the 40 or so people who attended in person, we had over 180 people submit actual responses through this as well. This, moving on from, and this is a word cloud that was, represents some of the key ideas based on the number of times these phrases were mentioned by the public. And so you can see this kind of word cloud of key opportunities that came out of the community input. The second workshop scoping meeting was held on June 10th, and it focused on growth management. It involved a presentation on the growth trends and projections for the region, the South Bay, not only Palo Alto, but the region in which we live. And it looked at what some of the other cities in the South Bay and around California are doing to manage growth. One of the strategies that's often used is to identify areas of a municipality to focus growth into. And so what we did in the breakout session at this second workshop was to ask community members here in Palo Alto to identify areas of the city which should be protected and preserved, but also to identify areas of the city that could potentially accommodate some level of change. And so in order to do that, when the participants broke out into smaller groups, they were at a table with a map of the city, and they were asked to draw on the map to indicate which areas of the city should be preserved and which areas could potentially accommodate some level of change. And here's an example of one of those maps from one of the tables. We actually had 4 groups, so we had 4 different maps, but all of them looked like this, with areas identified and notes drawn. What staff and the consultants did in order to roll up input from this meeting was to look for areas of overlap and commonalities, and to develop a map of the following 6 focus areas. I'm sorry, the first focus area seems to be cut off a little bit at the top, but it includes the downtown area and also the Stanford Shopping Center. The second focus area runs really down the El Camino Real corridor from north to south. The third focus area is the Cal Ave area, including both California Avenue and the Fry's site. The fourth focus area identified by community members is the Stanford Research Park. The fifth is what we call the East Meadow Bayshore area, so it includes the East Meadow Circle area, but also extends a little further north and further south. And the sixth area is South San Antonio, and that's really along the south side of San Antonio, up against the border with Mountain View. So building on the input from the first 2 workshops, we then moved to the third scoping meeting or workshop, and the theme of this one was alternative futures. And what participants did here was to work with the focus areas that had been previously identified through community input, and try to and provide information on their vision for how each of those focus areas could develop over the next 15 years. We had excellent turnout for this, approximately 80 people in attendance, and they broke out into 9 different groups, each of them completing this visioning exercise. In order to assist people and give them a launching point for the discussion, we prepared 3 different scenarios, very broad brushstrokes, to help guide the discussion and spur some ideas. And participants were allowed to choose the scenario that resonated most with them and make adjustments, or they were also given the option to come up with their own scenario. And in fact, some groups did just that. They came up with a different scenario. And again, in addition to the workshop, we made a special attempt to go out to the community and reach out to people who might not have had the opportunity to come to an evening workshop. And so we prepared another activity in Open City Hall, which really mimicked the breakout activity at the third scoping meeting. People were able to, and still are, because this activity is still up on Open City Hall for one more day, are able to select one of the 6 focus areas and provide input about how they feel that focus area should develop between now and 2030. So the end product of all this outreach has been, is the 4 preliminary concepts that have been included in your packet tonight. I'd like to emphasize, first and foremost, that all of these, what we heard very clearly from the community, and what is common to all of these alternatives, is a desire to preserve and protect Palo Alto's single-family residential R1 neighborhoods. And so that is included, implicit in all of the alternatives that you have before you. So maybe I'll just run through each of the alternatives in order, providing a little bit of detail. There's much more detail included in your packet, and we'll certainly be able to answer questions from the public or from council regarding the details. And we certainly would like to hear. I'd like also to emphasize that these are very much conceptual at the moment, and we're looking for input from the public and from council to help better define them so that we can move forward with the EIR. So the first concept is what we're calling do nothing. And this would be the no project alternative under CEQA. It's a legal requirement. It doesn't mean that nothing changes. Rather, it means it's a business as usual type scenario. So it supposes that the comprehensive plan is not updated, policies do not change, zoning does not change. What would happen if we just continued on this course? So under this alternative, development would continue to happen. It would continue to happen under existing policies, and it could be accommodated under existing zoning. Under this alternative, we would most likely continue to see the evolution of El Camino Real towards a more mixed-use character, and we would continue to see growth pressures in the Cal Ave area. And probably also the evolution of the South El Camino area. There would be no new major infrastructure improvements under this alternative. The second concept is the idea of slowing growth and making no changes in land use designations. Under this alternative, and also under this concept, and also under concept number 3, the city would adopt and implement a new procedure for metering the pace of office and residential development in the city. I'm sorry, office, and that's an important consideration. It's office and research and development. There would be some residential growth under this alternative, but it would be really a bare minimum in order to satisfy state requirements. In addition, under this alternative, there would be policies to preserve and enhance neighborhood serving retail, and also to regulate formula retail. There would be, in the course of El Camino Real, continuing its course towards a more mixed-use character, or rather residential character, setbacks would be increased, and the three-story height limit that's allowed in the current zoning would that's what you would begin to see as parcels along El Camino Real redeveloped under this alternative. Concept 3 is what we're calling slow growth and the adjusted location of housing sites. So it's different from alternative 2, primarily in the location of where the housing development would occur. Again, under this alternative, there would be, the city would adopt and implement a procedure for metering the pace of office and R&D projects. The housing sites, however, the housing sites in the current housing element that's been submitted to HCD would be relocated. And they would, the sites along South El Camino and South San Antonio would be relocated. Instead, nodes of development close to the planned bus rapid transit stops on El Camino Real would be identified, and housing and development would be concentrated into those areas, which are within a half-mile radius of Caltrain stations and a quarter-mile radius of planned bus rapid transit stops. The major infrastructure improvement under this alternative would involve depressing the Caltrain tracks between Page Mill and the south of the city. And the fourth concept is what we're calling the net zero approach. And this is really an opportunity to test various net zero concepts. And the difference between concept number 4 and concept number 3, for example, also has to do with the location of future development. Growth in the East Meadow Bayshore area, for example, change rather in that area would be such that the area would take on more of an urban village type character. We anticipate that under this concept, the 3 nodes identified along El Camino under the third concept would also come into being. But in addition, the Fry site would be redeveloped, or would be, the designation on the Fry site would be changed to mixed use. And some of the surface parking lots in the research park property that front El Camino Real could be redesignated for mixed use development. So while this alternative would allow for more redevelopment than any of the others, it's predicated on the assumption that all of new development would be required to be net zero in terms of vehicle miles traveled, net zero in terms of GHG emissions. And we're really looking for input from the public and from council as to what type of performance standards would be appropriate under this alternative to test in the EIR. And so just to wrap up a little bit here, in terms of scenario development, what we've done so far is to synthesize input from the public received at the workshops and online, and to present that, first of all, on July 9th to PTC, and now tonight to City Council. The full details of everything that we heard from the community is included in your packet. It's also available, publicly available on the project website at paloaltocomplan.org. So we are right now at number 2 in the process. Following this, once council gives approval to proceed with the EIR analysis, we would begin the work of quantifying each of the scenarios and fleshing out for analysis in the EIR. That work would be presented to the public in the form of a draft EIR available at the end of this year, together with a draft of the plan, and that would be available for public discussion and PTC and council input in the new year. Review of those alternatives would inform a decision on a preferred alternative, which would also be the subject of further discussion by the public and the council, and then ultimately at the end of next year, council would certify the final EIR, and we hope adopt the updated comprehensive plan.
Well, thank you, Andrew. If I can just wrap up with this process diagram, which I hope is familiar to some of you. This is the diagram that we shared earlier this year. I think it was in March when we discussed the need to engage with the community on a kind of broader level than had been done to date by the Planning and Transportation Commission with the policy language that was developed by them over several years. The council at that time recognized the need for some expanded conversation about these issues, and we divided the planning process into these 5 phases. Each one of them includes opportunities for council input and direction, course corrections if needed. Those are represented by the dots on the top bar. Even though each area has 1 dot, obviously there could be multiple meetings in each one of those time periods. We're currently getting to the end of what's called the visioning phase in this diagram, in which we envisioned ultimately getting the council sign-off on possible alternatives to analyze in the EIR. And tonight we want to hear from you whether we're there yet or whether there are specific additional pieces of information that you need to sign off on one or more of these alternatives. It takes, unfortunately, about 5 months in our schedule to prepare a draft DIR. There's a lot of hard work involved by Andrew and his colleagues to actually do the analysis once we select an EIR. And in my experience, many, many years preparing EIRs now, the hardest part of any EIR process is actually starting. Because once you start, the analysis just, it keeps going. You start quantifying, you do the analysis leads to the draft EIR, the draft EIR leads to public comments, those comments lead to changes and improvements to the draft, and to a final and ultimately an informed decision at the end of the day. So we've structured this so that at this current period, in the visioning phase, we would have multiple alternatives, hoping that ultimately when the draft EIR is released, there'll be maximum flexibility for the council at that time. So think early 2015 to choose among the alternatives, to blend the favorite elements of the alternatives, and ultimately drive the discussion towards adoption of a comp plan at the end of next year that reflects the collective vision of the community. So we're not even halfway through the process that we articulated in March. But I think we've made a good start. We've heard a lot of wonderful public input, and we would very much appreciate hearing more tonight, as well as the council's specific direction. So Andrew and I are available to answer questions about this process, and of course we're eager to hear your comments and questions and those of the public. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Hillary and Andrew, and thanks very much for that last piece. If I just might add something as somebody who's not a planner, but somebody who's been doing this for a long period of time, and also just sort of put some of the work I think that is now going to be taking place with the council in very kind of layperson terms a lot. Number one, I know the council has been eager for this discussion to come to the council and for you to begin to work through this issue. And so sometimes the process that we go through, both as far as outreach and the PTC and those sorts of things, can seem that they're as if they're sort of on autopilot. But now it's here, it's in your lap. The staff is being guided by a schedule that was developed with the council's approval. But I do think it's important to recognize again that while there was a lot of focus on this EIR process, that's because of the specific requirements in California to be able to effectuate important public decisions like this. If we were in another state that didn't have CEQA, for example, you would just be launching into a discussion about what kind of future scenarios do you want to see, how do you want to, what does the future look like, and how do you want to proceed with that? And in truth, what we're doing here in many ways is doing those almost in tandem but in a way that ultimately unfolds so that you will really get to what you want, which is, okay, what is a vision for the future that is going to guide the city through 2030? So in listening to the public and working through this and looking at the data and the impacts, not just based on feeling, but also on the quantitative impacts of these things, you're in a position to be able to say, yes, this is the direction that we want to go in. Now, we've talked about this, and I think it's really important just to emphasize again, this is first and foremost a residential community in which, as has been said, really the land use form and the lifestyle, the direct lifestyle in residential communities is essentially going to remain unchanged as we go through this process. And only a small portion of the city is ultimately going to be being looked at, and even in that case, it's almost all redevelopment. And so we're really going to be talking about what is the form and the pace of that change within a few small areas. One of the reasons that the staff, and I think rightfully, advanced this approach of initiating the EIR as a way to ultimately really directly inform your comp plan discussion itself is because of yours and the community's concern that there are enough changes that are taking place in the city that to have a plan to guide the direction, we need to get that plan updated sooner than later. And this was the shortest path to being able to accomplish that. Now, we know that as elected representatives of the people, your job is to ensure that there has been the kind of participation and input that you need to see before you make an ultimate decision. But it would be a mistake to ignore the fact that while we had some charts there with where the EIR input is we didn't show you a detailed chart of what will also happen once you get into the discussion phase on the comp plan itself. And in that regard, just as even this, the council is in control about this, not only the schedule, the ultimate selection of alternatives, and ultimately finally a plan, but how deep you want to go, how wide you want to reach. We're very excited on the staff. This is clearly a really important time in our city, and this is exactly what the doctor would order for us in sort of updating our comprehensive plan. There may be folks who think the existing plan is great the way it is. There may be other people that think that there needs to be dramatic change. I happen to be in a camp that there is a tremendous amount of good things in our existing comprehensive plan. This is not like in any way that, from my view, that we're starting from scratch. So hopefully we can stay on course, because I know that there's a desire on the council's part, and I would say this, a commitment from the staff to strengthen in a more formal way our continuous use of the comprehensive plan in informing the public policy decisions that we bring before the council. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Before I open the public hearing, I promise colleagues that if they have any questions about the actual spot that we're at with this comprehensive plan, to ask them now for any points of clarification, and then we're going to go out to the public for the public hearing, and then back for questions on the scenarios, but not decisions on the scenarios. Councilmember Klein, I see your light on.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. And following up on your lead to limit questions to our process and not talk about the alternatives that are being suggested by the staff tonight, I have 3 questions. First, this is one is just to get my own mind around what is being proposed and what is not being proposed. I'm thinking of what the scenarios that you're proposing and the process as being at the proverbial 30,000-foot level, and that things such as, if somebody was to propose that there has to be a ice cream store in every neighborhood, that's at the 5 or 10,000 foot level, and that would come later on in the process. Is that correct?
Yes.
But then, to follow up on that, sir, I'm not quite sure how that squares with when you suggest that in some of these scenarios, things such as depressing the tracks would be involved. Isn't that something that would be at least at the 10 or 15,000 foot level rather than 30?
Thank you, Councilmember Klein, for the opportunity to clarify that. We tried to explain in the staff report that there are really three ways that a scenario has a potential to have impacts that have to be analyzed in the EIR. There are policy changes that might be thought of with each of these scenarios. There are land use map changes. So a couple of the alternatives include changes to the land use designations, which ultimately lead to changes in zoning. And the third way that a scenario could have different impacts than another is if it includes infrastructure changes. So for each of these really 30,000 foot scenarios, we did try and identify whether there were key changes in transportation infrastructure. So one includes testing improvements related to the county's expressways. One includes the testing that idea of depressing the Caltrain tracks for a portion of the city.
Yeah, I understand
tests
that,
this
and I
idea
have
of
read
expanded
it.
transit.
Excuse me, but I want to move us along. If that's the case, then why doesn't each scenario come with a bunch of suggestions along those lines? Am I working at the 30,000 foot level, or am I working at a combination of them? The scenarios, as you've listed them and asked for our recommendation on them, doesn't include a long list. It just says scenarios 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I'm a little unclear again as to what input ultimately the council should give on this and what we should expect to hear from the public. Are those just, I mean, do you have or in other words, does each scenario really come with another list of subordinate policies that would have to go along with it?
I think we've tried in the staff report to describe these alternatives at each of them at a similar level of detail to be very clear that each would have to be further defined. Each would probably result in some adjustments to the policy language that this council saw earlier in the year. And our question to you this evening is what additional information the council would like to see about these alternatives before we move forward into the EIR analysis.
Well, I've moved down considerably from 30,000 feet after hearing your answer, frankly. Mr. Keene?
Well, I just wanted to add, maybe it's more of a question to Hillary, that when we're talking about what additional information the council might want to be included in the analysis of the alternatives, the council could begin to specify, I'll just stay with Councilmember Klein's metaphor, about issues that are closer to the ground than originally proposed. That would be a way of also defining potentially, here's some more analysis that we want to see in this regard. And it seems to me that we have a little bit of a mix and match here. I think the question ultimately gets to be the impact on doing this work and this analysis if suddenly there are 10,000 issues or whatever that start to be added to look at it as it relates to the ability to proceed and do the analysis in a time frame. So I'm guessing that there is the opportunity as the council works through this to look at how to ask, could we look at this and what would that mean and all of those sorts of things, but somehow we'll probably have to temper that at some point, look and say, okay, what does this list look like now and what is the impact on the approach that we're talking about of up to 4 potential alternatives in the time frame that we're talking about. Is that correct?
Well, you're moving along the lines that I was suggesting, but you're hearing my frustration. I'm not quite sure, having heard your explanation, what I would be voting for if I said I'm in favor of 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, whatever. But anyway, between now and Wednesday, you'll make it clearer as to what we're really voting on. My second question along those lines are that since you've listed 4 alternatives here, were there alternatives that you considered that were dropped? If so, what?
Well, at the community workshop, as Andrew indicated, there were 9 different small groups that came up with 9 different alternatives. There was a lot of commonality. I mean, so there was overlap. And so PlaceWorks and the staff had to condense those 9 into 4. There were just a few things that came up in the 9 that didn't make it into the 4 and that we've heard in public testimony throughout this process. One of them, for example, is the idea of fully undergrounding Caltrain. We heard that idea. We understand there are members of the community that want that to be analyzed here, but we just thought that was too ambitious for a 15-year plan that's based on city resources rather than regional resources. So that's just one example. I think in the 4 scenarios, we did try and capture a vast majority of the ideas that came out of the public meetings.
But did you have any other ideas that you didn't include in your final report?
I think we think that these 4 ultimately will capture the ideas that will need to be analyzed in the EIR. They obviously, some of them need further refinement, and we have some ideas that we could talk about what that might look like. But I think our goal was to define a range of alternatives that ultimately could bracket a likely outcome to this planning process. And we feel like these 4 can do that.
My last question, excuse me, at least the first 3 alternatives, is it fair to say that if we adopted any of them, and if we had a Rip Van Winkle who went to sleep here in 2014 and came back in 2030, that the city would look pretty much the same?
In the eye of the beholder, it probably.
Yeah, I think City Manager Keene was correct in saying a vast majority of the city would look the same. What we've done in each of these alternatives is try and identify very specific focus areas where there might be some change in the next 15 years and articulate the shades of gray between the alternatives in those limited areas of the city.
Thank you.
Okay, I have 2 more lights, so Councilmember Burt.
Well, first I want to follow on to get some clarification on our process tonight, because what I heard the mayor say isn't quite what I heard you say, Hillary, and then what you said isn't quite what I see and heard Andrew say. And so I think we've got to get some clarity on this. This particular segment, Mayor, you had said this is about questions about the process, but I didn't hear anything about where we would have an opportunity to wade in substantially about the process.
This is to get clear about the scoping portion of the process that we're in. After this, we'll go into questions about the scenarios, and then I'm thinking if we had a lot of time tonight, we could go to the next stage, which would be actually looking at the scenarios and voting on them. That's what I was hoping.
None of that covers what I was just asking about, which is a discussion about our process, and the process having
the process
several,
for the entire EIR?
I'm sorry, I was speaking.
Well, I'm trying to get
I'm going to
clarification.
clarify. So
Okay.
if I can be uninterrupted, I'll clarify what I meant. The process has several elements. We have the EIR process and the elements to that. And then we have the comp plan itself process. And there's a relationship, of course, between those. And so that's a big part of where I think we are right now, is a discussion about a reality check on the process, rather than assuming that we're going forward with one timeline, one sequence that's already been determined, and our opportunity is to comment on some of these other substantive elements. So that's what I was asking about.
Yes, that is, we're in a, well, I think we've gone through this, but it is, for me, just if I can speak from my own perspective, because I've been so used to responding to other people's EIRs, the difference for me this time is that we're building our own. So we're in that process of sweeping into getting into that draft EIR that is our draft EIR, not Stanford's, not high-speed rails, not somebody else's. And so this is the process that we are emerging into before we go into a much more narrow funnel where we're actually selecting.
Okay, but that's not what I'm asking about.
Could I just, here's what I heard from the mayor, maybe I'm seeing it too narrowly, was that you were asking to, in a sense, restrict your questions right now, this evening, at this moment, to questions about the process as the staff has described it, so that it is clear as much as possible that the council thinks, oh, we hear what you guys are saying. And then you said you were going to invite the public to comment. It would seem in my mind, and then following that at any point, then the council has the opportunity to look at that and say, well, I don't agree with that process, or I don't understand that. I think that we're missing something here, or whatever, and to propose that. Not that we would be cutting that off, because clearly, and that's why I said, it may seem like this is on autopilot, but this is your process. And part of the reason for this meeting is to get an understanding of both what we're proposing, what the public starts to say, and then you guys have to decide how does it need to be adjusted or adapted, if at all, here or there.
So that is the missing component that I was asking about, and that's our opportunity to discuss the process that we're going through. So you spoke about us having an opportunity to ask questions about the process, but not to comment on it, and then you spoke about an opportunity to talk about the different scenarios, but that's not the process. So if that will be part of either tonight's discussion or Wednesday's discussion, that would address the concern that I'm voicing here.
Are we good with this?
I mean, I don't see how, this is an ambitious schedule, and we're only going to achieve it if it's a schedule that the council is understand and is bought into, in my view. So you need to have that discussion.
Okay, great. And then my next question is for Andrew. You, on page 2, in the goals for tonight, described the council feedback on 2 areas. Direction on beginning the EIR analysis and providing specific additional information for refinement of the alternative scenarios. And maybe this is more a question for Hillary then, on what was the intent here, because I don't see in that an opportunity to provide direction regarding significant changes to the scenarios, including potentially combinations of those scenarios, reductions in the number of scenarios, those more substantive changes other than what are described as specific additional information for refinement.
Thank you, Councilmember Burt. I think the slide is shorthand for what you find in your staff report, where I think we're clear that our desire is for the council either to direct staff to proceed with preparation of the EIR, taking into consideration input received during the scoping period and based on the 4 alternatives with specified modifications and refinements as desired, or to identify specific additional information required to proceed. So I think we're looking for council's comments, direction on these alternatives, how they should be modified, any additional information you think is needed to better define them, with the ultimate goal of, at some point, getting the council direction to proceed with the EIR analysis.
Well, that's helpful. What I had described is more broad yet than what you just described from the staff report, because I can foresee that the council may say, we want a 5th scenario, we only want 2 or 3, we want to combine these, we want this to return with substantially different information before proceeding. All those sorts of options, I would think, would be within the discussion range of possibilities we'd be having tonight and Wednesday. Is that understood and agreed on? Okay. Then, as far as the concepts, we have these four, and Andrew described them coming out of the 3 public meetings, and really principally the final public meeting at the Elks Club, which I attended and thought was a great, valuable meeting. But my question is, how did either the staff or the consultant come to the conclusion that that meeting, as good as it was, with close to 100 people in attendance, I don't know the exact number, but something like that, it was a great meeting, should essentially define the parameters of what our EIR scoping would be for something so consequential as the comprehensive plan? I can certainly see how it contributed to the dialogue in a meaningful way. But to take that and go from there to saying that you boiled down from that meeting to come with the 4 scenarios that become the Bible for what we're studying for of the environmental impacts of our comp plan for the next 15 years seems to be a big leap. So how did we go from that meeting to these 4 and think that is the breadth of the community input that we should have?
Well, thank you, Councilmember Byrd. I think we're looking for council direction this evening about whether you think we should go out and do additional public input, or whether you think we have cast the net wide enough in terms of the range represented by these alternatives to do the kind of quantification and analysis of impacts and benefits that comes with a draft EIR. In other words, if the net is cast wide enough, then there's an opportunity for refinement after the draft EIR is available and we have way more information than we do now. If the net is not broad enough, then I take your point. We should step back and examine whether there's a concept that's missing here, an idea that's not yet represented in this range of alternatives that should be on the table. I hope that will come up this evening.
Well, and I'll just add that there's an additional danger, as much as I understand the purpose of a EIR scoping, for the community to see that broad net as, if it's too broad in one portion of the net or another, as concerning the community whether scenarios are being seriously considered that will be alarming to the community. And that's a consideration we should all take as well. Final question. We're looking at all this within these scenarios within the context of a comp plan EIR and the comp plan EIR to set the range of scenarios that we're looking at under the comp plan. Has staff looked at whether some of the things that the city manager alluded to that have been community concerns, and how do we get our hands around controlling our destiny rather than reacting to a bunch of market forces that it feels like we don't have adequate control over what's happening in our community? Has staff looked at potentially breaking out some of those mechanisms that we had envisioned might go into the comp plan update and enacting some of them on more of an interim basis? If the comp plan is going to take up to 2 years to be complete, and then also perhaps this would help inform the feasibility of adopting some mechanisms that we haven't used before. So has there been any of that consideration on essentially having a dual-track process?
Well, thank you for the question. I think the dual-track process is what we have been trying to do on PC reform. For example, one of the items that this council highlighted early in the year as critical to proceed with on a faster track. Same with residential permit parking. So there are a number of things like that that we are dual tracking. We can talk about those and other issues at future agendas. I think we're open to the council's suggestions about other programs that might merit the same fast track attention. We do have resource constraints, as you know, so the more of those fast track items we take on, the longer the long track items will take. And we had understood from the council early in the year that there was a sense of urgency to have an updated vision for the city represented by this comprehensive plan. And so we've tried to articulate a strategy to get to the finish line on that as quickly as possible.
If I just might add, I don't think the staff wants to presume that we have identified and mapped out all of the fast-track items that anybody in the community can make a case ought to be worked on. On the other hand, I would also say that in this past year, we have moved to identify, as Hillary mentioned, a lot of those things to try to work through. So as it relates to parking and traffic and some of those issues, but by even as many things that we're bringing forward to the council and the community look at, there's still many, many more that could get way more granular.
Well, and to the credit of this process to date, I've found that some of the things that are being suggested in the scenarios, components of them, are very intriguing and perhaps warranting bringing them forward sooner, things that we hadn't thought of before. And so you've responded to some of the things we brought forward, but some of the things that have come out of this process are at least equally intriguing. So, thanks.
Okay, I do have about 30 cards here, but I have Councilmember Holman and Councilmember Schmidt. Do you have questions for the process? I think we got a little broad this last time, but if we can try to narrow that now so we can get out to the public hearing and hear from the public. Councilmember Holman.
I'll do my best to follow that guidance. So my first question is really broad brush. So the presentation on slide 7 talks about the difference between doing a project level EIR and doing a program EIR. So we're talking about a program EIR. Thank you for putting that up. And so my question is, I'm not quite sure what program EIR we're looking at doing. And here's the reason for my question, here's the basis for the question. So I'm not sure if we're looking at our baseline policies of being the existing comp plan or the proposed comp plan, or it's called proposed some places, the draft comp plan. So I don't know what the baseline is. So the scenarios that are identified here, what are they building on? And that's a basic consideration for me about our process.
Well, I think the EIR, whether it's a program EIR or a project EIR, an EIR has to include an existing condition baseline. In addition, we're proposing a baseline that is the no action or the do nothing alternative, which would be the existing comp plan stays in place, is not updated. It continues to get old and creaky, but it served us well, and we keep it alive until 2030. So those are the two baselines we're proposing to use, existing conditions and the no project alternative.
Just a little bit of clarity around that. So would the other scenarios 2, 3, and 4 still build on the existing comp plan? Okay, all right, thank you for that clarity. So just to know what we're looking at as part of our procedure tonight. So the presentation differs from what's in the staff report in terms of content. So, and on page 662, staff packet page 662, it talks about the scenarios and this is about our process, not about the scenarios, it talks about the scenarios having high-level vision statements, but they'd need to be further developed. So when would the council and public be exposed to those further developed and better defined guidance that we'd be giving to the EIR consultants in order to perform the analysis?
Thank you, Councilmember Holman. I think that's the question we're asking council this evening. We have some ideas in the staff report of some additional data and information we could bring forward about these alternatives, but we're hoping that to have council buy-in at a real conceptual level before we burn a lot of time and energy with further definition. We're hoping you'll tell us exactly what additional information you think is needed before you can bless these or a modified version of these as the direction with which to move forward.
Okay, well, following on that, so when will the, just to use one example, one that I've brought up several times before, is when will the baseline data be available to the public, the consultant, council members, about like LOS? Like how's it changed from when this comp plan was approved and, you know, the year 2000 or whatever, because there have been measures along the way too. So when will all of that kind of data, you know, how much non-residential growth there's been, how much residential growth there's been, when will those data points be available?
Thank you again, Councilmember Holman. We have been working steadily on collecting baseline data and putting it in a format that we can put it out for public and council use and review. Obviously, that information is critical as well as defining alternatives to the EIR's analysis. So we're getting close on that. Our thought was that when we have the final alternatives ready to proceed with the EIR analysis, we could release the baseline data, allow the public to comment and help us massage that information as the EIR analysis was underway. So at the end of the year, we would have already vetted alternatives with the public and developed alternatives based on significant public input, and we would have also vetted and gotten comments on the baseline data that we're using to perform the analysis. So we're close, we just haven't been able to push those documents out the door quite yet.
Thank you for that. And wouldn't we need to have some kind of agreement on the baseline data before we could actually launch the EIR analysis?
We definitely need to have the data, and we would like to get input on that as the EIR analysis is getting underway, yes.
And then last question, it is akin to a question that Councilmember Burt asked, having to do with dual tracking and fast tracking. And as you know, and Hillary, don't pummel me for bringing this up yet again, the California Avenue Concept Plan. And so help me understand with the current timeline, if we're looking at basically the end of 2015, having the comp plan and the EIR completed, how long then further out from that would we be looking at the zoning that implements the comprehensive plan in a realistic scenario?
Well, we haven't gone farther than the end of 2015. Obviously, you have to set the vision and policy in the comprehensive plan before you can implement that vision and policy. I should say, though, the exception here is the Fry site. As the council knows, we were hopefully successful in getting access to funding from VTA to fast track, as Councilmember Burt suggested, a more specific plan for that site. That process, the grant process, has been longer than I think any of us anticipated, but we hope that in the next few months we'll be able to come back to council with a scope of work, an outline for that process that would dual track something having to do with that one particular part of the California Avenue area. The rest of if any zoning changes in the rest of the area would potentially have to wait until the comprehensive plan was completed.
And I guess I lied. That wasn't my last question. I have one more. There are other pressing situations that are exacerbating current conditions. So, I mean, one can't be all to everyone, but there are pressures that are exacerbating situations. So if we needed to, council agreed that we needed to make some changes currently, as opposed to waiting to the end of this process, would staff support, you think, that?
As we indicated earlier, obviously it becomes an issue of prioritization and resources, how much we can do at one time versus sequentially.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Councilmember Schmid.
One simple follow-up. I have from May the detailed schedule that includes the consultant operations. And in there, there are 3 council dates. August 4th, the next time this will appear at the council is March 18th, 7 months from now. The next time the council is involved is November 16th of 2015. Now, you are doing substantial work in between there with lots of decision points. Seems to me that that is woefully short on council interaction if ultimately the council is responsible for approving it. So I assume by the end of our meeting on Wednesday, the council will deal with the issue. Is that timing appropriate to give council responsibility for product?
Thank you, Councilmember Schmidt. I'd also direct you to page 679 of the packet where we've tried to expand on that. Obviously, it's critical that we get council sign-off and direction at every step along the way, and it may not happen in one meeting. We recognize that, but we've outlined here at the bottom of the page all of the issues and input that we would expect from the council along the way, and that may require multiple meetings. They may be on different dates than the one we guesstimated back in March, but I hope it's a little more clear here at the bottom of this page.
So by the end of the Wednesday meeting, we can deal with this.
Yeah, and I just want to say, I don't think this is an evolutionary or adaptive adjustment the staff is making. I think that May report was designed to show the key milestones on the EIR piece of the process. It's one of the reasons I talked about the fact that we hadn't even been talking about how all the detail on the comp plan pieces, but the expectation, even from the staff's sense of the design, that there would be, as Hillary indicates, many more opportunities for direct engagement. And as you're saying, Councilmember Schmidt, and I think the thrust of some of this conversation, you may want to identify and make specific requests about what those events are and what the timeline could be.
Good, thank you.
Councilmember Price?
Yes, I wanted to thank the staff for all the work and the consultants, all the work that's happened and all the community input. I really would like to hear from the community at this point. I have comments about a couple of the alternatives, but I'll wait on that. I think it's important for us to move forward. I mean, we could continue to debate the shape, the size, the pace of how we're going to do this and additional detail. But I think before we can talk more sensibly about this, we need more information, and we also need to hear from the community. So my request is that I don't know how many other people want to speak, that we really move forward so that we can have some productive outcomes of the meeting tonight.
I have one more, and that's Vice Mayor Niss.
And I want to reiterate just a couple of things, because I think it's really important that we are definitive that we are working with our current comprehensive plan. We have not started from ground zero, and I think those of you who are patiently waiting tonight need to know that as well. Probably most of the group in here hasn't read the entire comprehensive plan. It is very detailed and certainly very precise. But we're looking at that as a starting point. Not the ending point, but we're looking at that at the starting point. And I think it's important. I am correct, am I not? Okay, and the second aspect of this is that we are in the process timeline. That's where we are tonight. We're in a process. And tonight will not make the final decisions about where we're going to be at the end of the next year and a half. if we make the year and a half. Okay, thank you.
Okay, with that, I'd like to go out to the public. And the public will have 3 minutes to speak each, and I will call up, let's see if I can call up 3 people at a time. And let's get started. So thank you for waiting and for being patient. Our first speaker will be Beth Benenberg, to be followed by Kate Downing, to be followed by Andy Isaacson. Beth, welcome.
Beth Benenberg, and I'm speaking tonight as an individual, not as a member of the HRB. My vision for Palo Alto is not to become a city of skyscrapers. Just as an aside, the group I was with at the Elks Club came up with the alternative slow residential, slow non-residential. So that's a sample of the kind of additional visions. But probably concept 2, slow non-residential growth and modest housing growth, comes closest to my vision. In terms of cultural resources, I recommend keeping the historic preservation measures that are in place. As a CLG city, it's required to have an historic resources board that can report directly to the State Office of Historic Preservation and can apply the Secretary of Interior standards to projects. Therefore, I would like to call for a CEQA evaluation of the Veterans Building. That's one of those hot-button, transit-centered spots. It's not just the building, but the site. The site is 27 University. The structure that's there is on the National Register of Historic Places, a designation that was given the building on this site. But there's a cultural landscape around it that is also very important. It includes an historic flagpole and a Veterans Monument Committee that comments on several wars with historic plaques. This is Palo Alto's Veterans Memorial. And veterans have met here for years, including even lunch meetings at the MacArthur Park restaurant. Now, statements have been made that the building could be moved off, somewhere for redevelopment. Moving the Veterans Building could have very significant adverse environmental impacts that could not be mitigated. I'd be ashamed if the city of Palo Alto would disrespect its veterans in this way. With all the difficulties they're having now, disrespect is not what they need. It's not the Palo Alto way. The building should remain a community meeting space on site with a plaza and more human scale buildings nearby. When too many people get jammed together, close together, the quality of life goes down.
Thank you. Kate Downing, to be followed by Andy Isaacson, to be followed by Robert McGrew.
Good evening, everyone. I've heard a lot of comments and read a lot of comments from the community about this planning, and a lot of what I hear seems to be very much like, this is what I want it to look like, or this is what I don't want it to look like, and that's the end, right? That's my goal. For me, when I think about a community and I think about the goals of a community, I think about things like, does the community have strong ties? Do the people here like each other? Do they spend time with each other? Is there diversity here? Are the basic needs of the community being met? Do we have hospitals? Do we have enough schools? And I also think about the poorest residents of this community. I ask myself, have we taken their needs into account as well? When I think about that kind of ideal community, frankly, I can't imagine how that community could possibly exist if there is no job growth in that community. And I don't know how you get job growth if you don't have a place for businesses to open up, you don't have office space, and you have nowhere for those employees to live. Without more office space and more housing stock, rents can only go up. And you can't grow one without the other. They need to go hand in hand so that we can limit the number of people commuting and parking in Palo Alto. Every part of the peninsula right now is working very hard to limit both commercial and residential growth. You know, just recently, Google was denied the ability to build housing on its very own property, right next to where people would have worked. No commuting, no traffic. Denied. All property owners across the peninsula seem to agree that there is no goal more important than increasing the prices of their homes. I disagree. Let's instead be the place that acknowledges that growth is good for our community and that a community filled with nothing but ever richer millionaires isn't where we want to go. Let's continue being the place bright people from around the country and around the world come to get a slice of the opportunity all of us here already enjoy. If we don't allow for growth, Silicon Valley as we know it today will cease to exist. We will have priced out all the young workers and all the new companies. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Andy Isaacson to be followed by Robert McGrew to be followed by Brandon Burr.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and City Council. I just want to give you a data point tonight when you consider these options of my own story. I live in downtown Palo Alto. I work in downtown Palo Alto. I'm an engineer at Palantir. My wife is a cancer researcher at Stanford University. I can walk to work. She bikes to work. It's a great place to be, and you'll often see me walking my dog around the neighborhood with young engineers, talking about advanced engineering concepts and talking about technology, right as we pass by the Hewlett-Packard garage, right, this great piece of history that we have here. And it's a powerful thing. We get to show them that Palo Alto is a place where innovation has lasted, from the earliest days of Silicon Valley to now. The truth is, unfortunately, I may not be here in a year and a half to be able to comment on the final proceedings. Because as my family grows, I have a young daughter, she's 2.5, we're looking to expand our family in the future. We can't possibly imagine being able to rent in Palo Alto as the rents go up. My own rents have raised, I calculated about 35% in the last 3 years. I'm looking at a 10 to 15% raise, probably again this December. I hope not. So what I ask you as you consider these different options is to realize that as the demand for jobs, for housing in this area has grown, we can't keep the supply constant, right? It just raises the prices. I would like to see Palo Alto become a beacon of innovation and technology for many years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert McGrew, to be followed by Brandon Burr, to be followed by Ian Depo-Ashi. You're going to have to help me when you get up here.
Madam Mayor, council members, thank you. When I came to Palo Alto in 1998, it was a place where, even though it was very expensive, middle-class families could live here, they could start a home, they could afford housing. Today, unless you bought your house long ago, only millionaires are truly able to afford housing here. That is not a good thing for Palo Alto. We're not going to be able to build more single-family homes, but there's room to build up. There's room to build up in the university area. There's room to build up in California Avenue. And because those areas are already dense, we can do it while preserving the character of the neighborhood. People in their 20s and 30s prefer to live in apartments. They prefer to live in condos. And they want to walk to jobs and services if they can find that housing. If we don't build up to make more housing, we'll see people forced to move into neighboring communities or to move out to places like Gilroy. And that just creates more traffic and more parking problems for those of us who are here. Also, those people go home in the evenings. They don't stay. They don't add to the restaurants, to the nightlife, to the retail and the services that we all enjoy. So I agree there are real parking issues here. To address those, let's build additional parking. There are many service level parking areas. Let's build a parking garage there. The neighborhood parking is overparked. Let's move to a permit parking system, a 2-hour parking or pay for parking. Finally, perhaps most controversially, I think the 50-foot height limit is a relic of a different time. Basically back then cities were dangerous and suburbs were the exciting place where young people were moving to. Today, young people are abandoning Palo Alto for San Francisco. It's sad that the Palo Alto skyline has 2 ugly buildings, both from the 1970s, including this one. Why don't we let's have 1 or 2 more tall buildings downtown, but let's make them tasteful and let's dedicate them to housing, which is something that Palo Alto desperately needs. I would like to see more room to grow housing, particularly in University Avenue near California Avenue. And although I'm willing to have a little more than 0, I like the Net Zero's proposals focus on mitigating effects rather than mitigating building. Don't try to mitigate traffic and parking by pricing people out. Instead, let's focus on mitigating the effects and making room for people who are not millionaires to live in Palo Alto. Thank you.
Thank you. Brandon Burr, to be followed by Inya, to be followed by Zachary Bush. Looks like we lost Brandon Burr. Okay, Inya, would you mind please helping me with your last name pronunciation, then Zachary, and then Nick Foe.
Hi, my name's Ilya Nepomniachtchi.
Thank you.
And thanks to the council for hearing us today. As a concerned citizen who works downtown, I'm speaking in favor of vastly increasing development and housing in the city. Net zero is great, maybe even something more ambitious. The city's current policy of restrictions on development only results in counterproductive results like increased traffic, like the already problematic intersection at High and Hamilton. We all have walked past there, it sucks. And a decreased sense of community. As Bob mentioned earlier, people go home, they live in neighboring communities. This takes away from the sense of community in the city already. These are people who are very intelligent, community-driven, responsible people who could be adding to Palo Alto, but instead are living elsewhere. They're being priced out and cannot live here. Furthermore, the current policy leaves us with old and very ugly-looking buildings. At best, they were built in the early 90s, maybe even before. They're basically an eyesore on the city. We can create better-looking buildings with more development. And this added development need not touch the great open areas and R1 residential zones in the city that are there. They're great, and they don't need to be touched to add more residential development. Palo Alto has the ability to become even more a great city that's worthy of envy from other communities in Silicon Valley and across the country. Instead, continuing to further restrict development has the potential to lock us up in the 70s, leave us permanently closed to entry for new people, and doomed to live in the past. Thank you.
Thank you. Zachary Bush, to be followed by Nick Foes, to be followed by Peter Wilczynski.
Thank you. I moved to Palo Alto 2 years ago, straight out of college, to start a job here. At the time, I lived in downtown Palo Alto. I worked in downtown Palo Alto. I walked to work every day, and I loved the community. But within a year, my rents increased to the point where I was essentially driven out of downtown. I currently live on the border of Menlo Park and Palo Alto. Still walk to work every day, but it's now about a 20-minute commute instead of a 5 to 10-minute commute. And if rents go up again, I will be another commuter. I will be driving into Palo Alto every day. I will be contributing to the traffic problem. I will be contributing to the emissions problem, not because I don't love this community, but because I have no choice, because it's not financially viable for me to stay in downtown anymore. So what I'm asking here today is that we consider options that don't drive people like me out of Palo Alto, that allow young people like me to come here seeking opportunities and to participate in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick Foes, to be followed by Peter Wilczynski and Ari Gusher.
Hello, Madam Mayor and City Council, thank you very much. My name is Nick Foes. I'm a 2-year resident in Palo Alto. I live in Ventura, as some people in the audience seem to be obsessed with where we actually currently live. I am a person who came to Palo Alto from the East Coast. I love it here. I love the character. I don't want any of that to change, but at the same time, I will not be able to continue being a resident of Palo Alto if my rent increases. We are currently going through a very, very severe drought of not only water, but also housing supply. So I would ask that you consider some of the more growth-minded and housing-creating proposals that are before you, and move forward with the environmental impact report. Thank you.
Peter Wilczynski, to be followed by Ari Gesher, to be followed by Bob Moss.
Council, Madam Mayor, I probably don't have 3 minutes of things to say here. My sentiment echoes, as you might imagine, many of the people in my demographic. But I think that the comments by Councilman Klein are particularly pertinent as you approach this decision. You've been given 4 proposals. You really have 2. 3 of them are roughly the same, it seems. The first 3 seem to be roughly similar to everything that's gone on in the past. And the 4th one offers an opportunity for growth, an opportunity for this community to move forward and build towards a future that we can all agree on and all share. As mentioned, all 4 of these proposals make no change to any of the land preserves or the residential buildings that I imagine many of you are able to appreciate, but they do allow people like me the opportunity to live in the California Avenue and the university areas, which currently, as many people have mentioned, have become very difficult to live in right now. And so I really do urge you to consider the fact that these do not in any way change the character of Palo Alto that you all enjoy, but do open it up to people like me, people like my cohort and my demographic who really are not millionaires and really cannot afford to live here right now. So I appreciate you and your civic service and really look forward to hearing the results of your decision.
Thank you. Ari Gesher, to be followed by Bob Moss, to be followed by Jason Ma.
14 years ago, almost to the day, I packed up my car and left Illinois, heading out west to seek my fortune, and I ended up here in Palo Alto with my first job being right off of California Ave, an area that I immediately fell in love with. In the intervening 14 years, about 11 of them I've spent working in Palo Alto, and many of them actually living in Palo Alto, and I've come to appreciate this as a very special place. My work has taken me around to many of the premier research institutions looking for recruits to bring in to the various companies that I've worked for. And Palo Alto is a very special place, if nothing else, just for Big Science Gulch out on 280, where you can see SLAC and the radio telescope all at the same time. This is a center of excellence. It's a center of innovation. It's a center of the modern age, and it's saddened me to see a lot of that energy begin to even decamp to San Francisco, where they have their own issues with rent and space because of a lack of office space here. In my time living here, I've loved living in Palo Alto, but to echo some earlier stories, as my family expanded, we were lucky to find a house in Menlo Park, and there was no way for us to stay in probably my favorite neighborhood in the whole world, the College Terrace. So I urge you to move forward with plans that actually allow growth, allow Palo Alto to remain the center of the world in lots of ways, as we have this sort of crucible moment where software is eating the whole world and Palo Alto is the birthplace of it all. I mean, we'll forget that the internet started at SRI right in Menlo Park, but we'll just call it Palo Alto. That we need to actually grow this place and let everyone who's going to come and help build that future live here, be part of that community, and keep Palo Alto the very special gem that it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob Moss, to be followed by Jason Ma, to be followed by William McCree.
Thank you, Mayor Shepherd and council members. Looking at the 4 options, I think option 1 probably makes the most sense. We have a comprehensive plan. It took years to get it developed, approved at the state level. It's going through the system. There's a regular procedure for revising the comprehensive plan. We have to be starting with that in a few years anyway. So why do we have to do something unusual and something so different than these concepts? But if you're going to look at the various concepts, I think concept 4 should be taken off the table, because there is no way you can really require the kind of changes in people's behavior that it implies. For example, it talks about no new auto trips. That's not going to happen. You're going to have more auto trips even if we don't build any more housing or any more office space. And let me give you an example. If you look at the letter that Steve Levy wrote you, he gave 2 locations where the population density in an office space was 3 to 4 times higher than normally he would have expected. Now, as you know, I've been telling you for years that the population density in office spaces is going up, and it's going to keep on going up. So even if we didn't build 1 more square foot of office space in Palo Alto, 5 years from now, there are going to be more workers here than we have today. So how to address this? When you look at new development, you have to look at the 3 things that are really going to impact the city: traffic, parking, and the cost of supporting the new development. Every new housing element costs the city a net of more than $2,500 a year more for services provided than we get in taxes. And over time, that's going to go up. Where are we going to get the money from? What are we going to spend it on? How are we going to keep our economy working? So if you're going to be doing any of these concepts, and you don't want to just keep going with the comprehensive plan, then concept 2 probably looks more realistic. Concepts 3 and 4 have a couple of features that really bother me. Going above the 50-foot height limit in specific locations is a really lousy idea. Don't let the camel put its nose under the tent. Because once you started that, you're going to have people going over the 50-foot height limit everywhere with all kinds of wonderful excuses why it's going to work. And we're going to lose the kind of city we've finally developed over a period of decades. Try to do things carefully and sensibly. Oh, and one last thing. We should be looking at how new development impacts schools. Now, I know there's supposedly a state law that says you're not supposed to look at school impacts on development. If the state law says that, the state law is an ass.
Jason Ma, to be followed by William McCree, to be followed by Tom Du Bois.
Hi. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me today. This is actually the first time I've addressed any city council, and I'm here because I feel very strongly about this issue. I moved to Palo Alto in 2010 after taking a job downtown. In the beginning, I lived downtown, only a few blocks away from my workplace. I biked to work every day, really enjoyed the place. More recently, however, I've actually had to move away from downtown due to significantly increased rents. I've actually begun driving, much to my own dismay. I would strongly support more housing in Palo Alto. There are many others like me, you've heard several of them already, young professionals who work in Palo Alto who would strongly prefer to live near where they work, but cannot due to a lack of affordable, available housing. I believe the best chance we have to make housing available will be to increase the number of housing units available in downtown Palo Alto and in the California Avenue area. Thank you.
Thank you, William McCree, to be followed by Tom Du Bois, to be followed by Eric Filseth.
Thank you. It's probably not surprising that I would echo many of the statements made by my peers supporting additional development, both housing and commercial. I'd like to address more directly the 4 plans laid out because I think the council touched on this a little bit, but I agree they don't quite cast a wide enough net. Many of them feel very similar, and they basically all preclude the amount of development I would expect. I got to hear both the eloquent descriptions of some of my friends describing why they feel the way that I feel. I also heard people around me whispering things like disgusting or cry me a river, which was pretty upsetting to me because the situation being a young person in Palo Alto is actually very hard. I live and work here, and I would like to continue to live here. I would like to one day be able to raise a family here, but I'm not sure that I would be able to, and that's scary. So I would encourage you to take a broader look at other plans that add more development. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom Du Bois, to be followed by Eric Filseth, to be followed by Andrew Ash.
Good evening, Council. I want to talk a little bit about process. I went to most of the Palo Alto meetings and the recent PTC comp plan meeting, and it's clear, I think, that there's a disconnect between the community and the PTC. At the PTC meeting, there seemed to be a rejection of the community input. The PTC was asking for scenarios with more growth, more office, and the difference in viewpoints was pretty striking, I thought. So I'm concerned about that disconnect. I thought our Palo Alto outreach was really good, and I hope that that input is not ignored. But overall, the process seems a little broken. My understanding is instead of starting with a citizens group on this comp plan update, we kind of backed into it. We started with Cal Ave and East Meadow Circle, and the work kind of expanded over the years until it became a complete update. So those years in the PTC committees, my understanding is very few of the public attended, and now the public is engaged. It's engaged on the scenario discussion, and I think we need to continue to get the input. Our Palo Alto community input phase shouldn't be over yet. Let's try to keep that going. I have read the comp plan, and I've also read the PTC updates, and the updates make significant changes that I believe a majority of Palo Altans would disagree with. The PTC updates are also a little schizophrenic. It's clear that it reflects different visions within the council itself. And some of the important language protecting residents has been dropped, and I can provide examples of those. So I just think the process needs to become more straightforward. Let's decide on a scenario, modify our current plan to support that scenario, and that's not really the process we're following right now. A lot of the scenarios are focused on mitigations and assumed growth. How about a scenario that improves the quality of life for residents and plans to make things better? I'd like to see a scenario that shows traffic, parking, noise, pollution getting better. So I actually would propose a course correction. What if we consider doing a quick update to the comp plan without an EIR by accepting all the changes that remove completed programs, outdated programs, kind of clean up stuff. And then we started a proper process to discuss the controversial issues. Start with a citizens working group that actually updates the elements, have the citizens group flesh out a preferred scenario, and then do the EIR, and then send that to the PTC for review. So the PTC work done on the comp plan update is kind of a sunk cost. Don't let it drive the process. We have a good comp plan. Let's not rush on an artificial deadline to create a plan that people don't want. Thanks.
Eric Filseth, to be followed by Andrew Ash, to be followed by Mehdi Al-Hassani. Now we're going to move on to Andrew Ash and then Mehdi Al-Hassani. And then Olya Krusing. I'll work on that name.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Andrew Ash, and I moved here to Palo Alto about 3 years ago in 2011. I moved from the East Coast, from the suburbs of Atlanta. And I came here because I had a great job in downtown Palo Alto, and I wanted to be able to live and work in this city because I loved it so much when I came here to interview. So I got an apartment, 275 Hawthorne. I lived there for a year, and when it came time for rents to come and the changes came, it was 30% more than what I'd been paying before. So with that, my girlfriend, now wife, and I moved out to the Redwood City, Menlo Park area, and now I'm one of those people that drives in every single day. I try to find somewhere to park, and I generally add to the traffic and the congestion of this area. But really what I want to be able to do and what I wish that I could do is to live in the downtown area to be able to prevent these sorts of issues. So the message that I have for you on the council is that growth is coming, it's inevitable. The question is just, how do you react to it? Do you wait and do you back into something that ends up being bad for the community, or do you plan ahead and get the construction started that will actually make the city of Palo Alto remain the place that people like I want to continue to move to through the next several decades? I do believe very strongly that there needs to be another option among the 4 options that were listed. There needs to be one that includes a high growth, possibly a higher city or a higher building limit included in there, and that's just something that's not present at all in the current options and needs to be strongly considered before this council will be able to make a decision. So with that, thank you very much, and I hope to hear from you shortly. Goodbye.
Thank you. Andrew Ash, to be followed by Mehdi. That was Andrew. Thank you. Mehdi Al-Hassani, to be followed by Olya Krasinski.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council, and City staff. My name is Mehdi Al-Hassani, and I live and work in Palo Alto. Like many people here, my wife and I feel very blessed to call Palo Alto our home. We enjoy long walks in our neighborhood, love our date nights in downtown Palo Alto, and yes, cheating on our diets by a trip going to Tin Pot or Scoop. We enjoy the diversity of wonderful people this city attracts. Both our companies were founded in Palo Alto, and we hope that one day we can raise a family here in this very special place. Today, I am here to urge the council, city staff, as well as my fellow Palo Altans to be forward-looking as we consider these alternatives and update the comprehensive plan. And I want to be clear about what I mean by that, as well as emphatically what I don't mean by that. First, we know the demand for housing in Palo Alto has surged quite dramatically in recent years for a variety of reasons, but most notably because of the strong economic growth. We're very blessed that in Santa Clara County, we've had the highest job growth for the past 2 years in California. But 167 new housing units a year is not going to cut it in the city, and it's having detrimental effects. In attempting to thread the needle of managing this growth while not disturbing the character of Palo Alto, the city staff has allocated a few areas for development while leaving most of the city largely untouched. I think the instincts of the staff here are correct. While It's hard to choose one alternative without knowing the data and growth estimates of the others. I do second the idea of building housing and commercial developments in the areas of downtown and California Avenue. Building more housing near transit areas is the future in urban America. I know this from my personal experience. I walk to work every day. During the weekday, if I have to get up to San Francisco, I'll take Caltrain. When I sneak away for a prayer service at Stanford, I'll take the Marguerite, which has a stop near my work. I don't cause traffic because I hardly ever need a car. And when I do, I take advantage of cheap car sharing options like Lyft or Uber. I'm well aware that I'm an exception, not the rule, but I'm also confident that if we build more housing in these transit areas, more people will take advantage. I know it's counterintuitive, and I know it's a big if, but if you plan and build correctly, you can reduce traffic by building more housing in denser areas. Moreover, I believe this will be good for business. Seeing the turnover on businesses on University Avenue, I know it's not easy. With lease prices being so high, it takes a lot of customers to make a profit. And Mr. Levy made this point in his email to you. I think expanding the customer base in downtown would be good for University Avenue. I also believe we need to ease regulation, but not bypass regulation in housing policy. To help build more housing, the more I have studied housing policy in Palo Alto, the more complicated I realize it is. Legacy policies, yes, including the height limit, are not sustainable for the long term. To be clear, this is not to suggest the Manhattanization of Palo Alto, but there's no reason the complex I currently live in could not have been 4 stories instead of 2. I know today we have many who believe growth and development are running amok in Palo Alto, but my reading on the situation is that part of the anti-growth backlash comes from the perception that too many exceptions were made, rules weren't followed, and many projects went through the system without proper vetting. If we're going to build more housing and commercial development, the city owes Palo Altans to play by the rules and operate in good faith. Finally, the one thing we seem to have consensus on in Palo Alto is the need to build more parking. I think the city staff is looking at a bunch of different options, including more garages, as well as including public transit. We should pull all levers. I know these issues we are discussing are incredibly complicated, and there are no easy answers. The growth issues we are facing are happening in cities across America. But Palo Alto has always been a city on a hill, and we found a way to give Palo Altans access to good housing, the best public education, and job opportunities. Here again, we can do so and be an example.
Thank you. Olya Krasnitsky, and to be followed by John Gislin and Catherine Palter.
Good evening. My name is Olya Krasnych. I've been a resident of the peninsula for 17 years. And I'm a member of the Generation Y, like many of us here today. And what brought me back to Palo Alto, I've been moving up and down, is that I can now finally afford a house because my grandma passed away last November, and this is the only reason that I can afford to live here now. I'd love to live in a condo, but the 3 condos that are available in Palo Alto today are nearly double the value of the house and are less than 30% of the size. So it's really not an option. So I'm forced to drive to work as a result, and I'd really like to encourage you to look into alternatives that would create more growth in the city for our generation. I'd like to also put a word of caution about alternative 4. I have a master's degree in sustainable design and construction from Stanford University, and I'm a very big proponent of net zero as a concept, but it is a young concept, and the language of that concept, or rather concepts, because what is net zero really? Are we talking about energy, water, traffic? I know traffic was mentioned here today, but I feel like that alternative should be discussed in much more detail and left for the future. I fear that with the kind of resistance to development we've seen in the city over the past years, if we adopt this alternative, we'll see no development because every project will be considered a non-zero impact project. And as far as the menu of options before us today, I think alternative 3 is the one that sits more closely and aligns more closely with what I envision for Palo Alto. Walkable streets with wide enough sidewalks with space to actually be useful, for bicycle racks, for places for seating, for planting, solar on the roof, possibly even black water recycling systems that we can use for irrigation. We're in a drought, and every year it continues to get worse, and yet we dispose of all of this water. These kinds of net zero concepts should be explored more, and I don't think alternative 3 goes nearly far enough, but it creates pockets of smart growth for the city that I think can take it into a great future. Thank you.
Thank you. John Gislin, to be followed by Catherine Palter, to be followed by Michael Griffin.
Good evening, Council. My name is John Gislin. I'd like to make 3 points, 1 narrow and 2 broader. The first point is I've seen a draft revision of the transportation element of the comprehensive plan, and in section T41, it used to say about residential arterials, treat these streets with landscaping medians and other visual improvements to distinguish them as residential streets in order to reduce traffic speeds. In the updated version, the reduction of traffic speeds is omitted. So I live on Middlefield, and at the Middlefield-Everett intersection, we've had 4 accidents in July, putting us at the top of the list of crash-prone intersections in Palo Alto. We don't seem to make the front pages like the 2 terrible accidents downtown, but the cars end up on our sidewalks and actually on the elevated lawn of my neighbor. So I think speeding is an element in those accidents. So I would urge you to put speed reduction back into the transportation element. More broadly, I think we've made a mistake in the way we've handled the comprehensive plan in the past, and that we haven't put the infrastructure piece ahead of the development piece. And so if we continue to do that, we're going to send a bill to the future, and it's going to be paid in more traffic and more parking problems and more pollution, and it's going to make Palo Alto a less desirable place to live. And third, I think it's critical that we don't waste all the effort and goodwill that this effort is generating to build a new comprehensive plan. I think you have to make the plan have teeth, have meaning. We must not allow this council or any council to override or ignore the policies and provisions of the new comprehensive plan. Thank you.
Thanks very much. The next speaker is Catherine Palter, followed by Michael Griffin, followed by Dan Garber. Greetings.
Thank you. My name is Catherine Palter, and I'm Stanford's Director of Land Use and Environmental Planning. Thank you for the opportunity to provide a summary of Stanford's comments tonight. I'll also leave a more detailed version for you to consider. Stanford's lands in the city of Palo Alto are extensive, totaling approximately 1,100 acres, and are used for a wide range of important purposes. A partial list includes research and development and office uses in the 700-acre Stanford Research Park, residential uses, medical uses, retail uses at the Stanford Shopping Center, the Sheraton Hotel, recreation uses at El Camino Park and the playing fields at El Camino Page Mill, and 27 University adjacent to the University Avenue Caltrain Depot. The goals, policies, and programs that the Palo Alto community selects for its comprehensive plan update could have profound effects, both positive and negative, on the city as a whole and on Stanford's contributions to the community. Stanford offers the following comments and suggestions for the EIR's project description and analysis to advance a thorough and meaningful evaluation of the relevant policy and environmental considerations. We believe the Council should instruct staff to return to Council with specific information for further discussion before beginning the EIR, so that the EIR will, 1, analyze appropriately defined alternatives that reflect a reasonable range of comprehensive plan options. 2, analyze an alternative that responsibly plans to accommodate the city's share of projected regional job and housing growth through 2030 and does not artificially depress such growth through annual caps or unrealistic net zero concepts. And 3, analyze use of 27 University Avenue to support transit growth and accessibility to this key peninsula transit center area, along with potential for other appropriate uses. With regard to my second point, the Comprehensive Plan Update EIR should study a responsibly planned, transit-oriented action alternative that would clearly allow the city, as a prominent regional actor, to accommodate its appropriate share of job and housing growth projected for the region for 2030. Analysis of this type of action alternative was urged at the Planning Commission hearing, and it should be given thorough and thoughtful consideration through the EIR process, so that the public and the decision makers can understand and assess the key trade-offs involved. Stanford recognizes that an action alternative that evaluates the job and housing growth projected for Palo Alto through 2030 is likely to show greater environmental impacts, at least before mitigation, than would scenarios 2, 3, and 4. Stanford is not suggesting that such an alternative should ultimately be selected for the updated comprehensive plan, but studying a more diverse range of alternatives will allow the city to truly understand key environmental trade-offs during its decision-making on the comprehensive plan, which is the stated goal of the CEQA process. We appreciate the opportunity to present these comments, and we look forward to a full and careful consideration of the range of policy and environmental issues that will need to be assessed as Palo Alto moves forward on this important planning process. Thank you.
Michael Griffith, to be followed by Dan Garber, to be followed by Shawnee Kleinhaus.
Good evening. I'm not sure whether I'm flying at 35,000 feet or 5,000 feet, but in reading over the development scenarios put forth by staff, it occurred to me that what I'd like to see is a best of breed approach, taking good ideas from all four of the alternatives and combining them into what I call a 2+ scenario. Now, fundamentally, I'm attracted to slowing the future pace of development in town, and I believe this is best reflected in alternative number 2, but where this scheme 2 would only call for making roadway improvements, I would like to see us add the depressing of the Caltrain tracks below grade, and this is an item that comes from number 3. There are several worthy items not appearing in any of the 4 scenarios. For example, the development of robust TDM programs to alleviate, among other things, the frustrating traffic snarls on entering and leaving Palo Alto during commute hours. If you're lucky enough to live and work in Palo Alto, you might not appreciate how bad this congestion is, but it's a mess, believe me. And with projects in the pipeline, it will only become worse. Another item for inclusion would be off-site parking in Newark, across the bay in Newark and their industrial areas, for example, facilitated by shuttle buses, and this is another ad. And of course, our famous residential parking permit program. I would only hope to see this brought to life quickly so as not to become lost in the rush to finalize the comp plan. Some of these items, and more hopefully, might be put under the umbrella of a so-called specific plan focusing on particular neighborhoods or topics like transportation and traffic, for example. We've had experience with this planning device when we developed the South of Forest plan a number of years ago. It now might be time for us to try that again in an attempt to solve our future development conundrums. Meanwhile, think alternative 2+, and I thank you.
Thank you, Dan Garber, to be followed by Shawnee Kleinhaus, to be followed by Sandra Slater.
By the end of the 1980s, the key goals that were high on the residentialists' agenda, reducing the size of the downtown commercial area by nearly half, anchoring the 50-foot height limit, and the downtown development cap were formerly part of the city's comprehensive plan and other policies. Thus, we are all residentialists. Now we are all part of the establishment. However, characterizing our current development issues into these two old camps obscures both the discussion that needs to be had and the potential for real solutions to be arrived at. The population of Santa Clara County is conservatively anticipated to be increased by nearly 150,000 by 2025. Traffic projections of our regional growth dwarf the impacts of any of the larger projects being proposed or currently being built, including Stanford's hospital projects. Time is of the essence. Current market will cycle. Failure to invest by avoiding the active management of our land use and infrastructure in good times significantly reduces the likelihood that we will successfully ride out the bad times ahead. Along with 80% of my peers, I intend to stay and get older in Palo Alto. We are responsible for stressing the city's services today, and this will increase going forward. But very few of us want to have to pay more than we already do for the many services the city provides and will need to provide more of in the future. The non-residential areas of the city contribute mightily to the city's revenues. Dramatically increasing the density of the city's downtown in some sort of uncontrolled manner is clearly no panacea, nor is burying the town's head in the sand of some sort of no or slow growth. This simply misses the point of what the city and the next comp plan needs to deal with. Building walls and gates around our town metaphorically are actually to keep people from driving, working, and living in it, will keep our streets clear and give me a parking spot in front of my house. But if that means I'm paying more taxes and I can't get a new grocery store in my neighborhood and it takes me 40 minutes to still drive to the Guild of Menlo Park during rush hour, the only thing I will have gained is a Palo Alto that is even more exclusionary to the young, the old, and those without means.
Shawnee Kleinhaus, to be followed by Sandra Slater, to be followed by David Cole.
Good evening. I'm Shawnee Kleinhaus. I'm going to say a few words for the Audubon Society and the Sierra Club, and then I'm going to speak as a resident of the city. So the first thing for the Sierra Club and for Audubon, we ask for no mixed use or residential east, north, bay side of 101. This has been a big fight over in Mountain View of whether residential and housing should be placed east of 101, and it's still being very divisive, but for various reasons, which I'm happy to provide more information, both organizations are opposed to that. And I'm going to talk about now as a resident and someone who's commented on a lot of EIRs, probably dozens of them. Alternatives that are not developed enough to provide information for a reasonable range of alternatives are difficult for the public to comprehend. They're difficult to comment on. They're difficult for us to actually grasp what you're trying to do. And I think that for the fourth alternative, which proposes a net zero concept, there is a problem because it's not clear why it would allow more growth. Some people here thought it would be the opposite, but staff says it would allow more growth. And if it does, it's not clear where that growth would be. I actually would like to ask you to remove that from consideration tonight and to not look at a mitigation measure, such a net zero, as a driving force for the general plan, and instead develop a reasonable range of alternative, including more development if so you wish, but apply the net zero as an overlay or as a mitigation for any alternatives to develop instead of as an alternative by itself. There is a problem with using a mitigation measure as a driving force because it predetermines the outcome. If you say that there's not going to be any impact because it's net zero, then what am I going to comment on? There is net zero. There is no alternative that could possibly be better than that in the analysis in the AER. So you're starting with already determining what the end result will be. And that is very wrong by CEQA. So again, I ask that you remove it and look at a reasonable range of alternative as required by CEQA. Thank you.
Sandra Slater, to be followed by David Cole, to be followed by Adina Levin.
Thank you for hearing all our comments and suffering through all these various opinions here tonight. I'm a longtime resident of Palo Alto. Indeed, my dad was graduated in the 1930s from Pali, and I'm a 25-year plus resident and brought my children up here. We all love Palo Alto, obviously. We know it's going to grow. It has to grow. And there are lots of ideas about how to manage that growth. Many of ideas here this evening talking about the future of Palo Alto, especially this younger generation who's going to inherit the city that you are currently considering. I have a vision of Palo Alto as a safe, inspiring, accessible, human-centered, healthy, and true to our legacy, a Palo Alto that encourages risk-taking, a place where spontaneous mixing happens, where there's a combustion of ideas. And as I said, human-centric, not car-centric. No one likes traffic, so let's plan for a Palo Alto that encourages commercial development and increased affordable housing near transportation and services so that people can connect and not sit alone in their vehicles. I encourage you to develop an integrated and robust transportation system that utilizes and encourages all forms of transportation. I encourage the city to be bold, to manage our growth so that our community fosters diversity and offers opportunities to a wide cross-section of the population. Let's bring new ideas here and not let our wonderful memories of Palo Alto of the past to cloud our vision of the future. Thank you.
Thank you. David Cole, to be followed by Adina Levin, to be followed by Elaine Wong.
Thank you, Council, for hearing all of our comments this evening. I agree with the net zero concepts in item 4, option 4, in that I believe that's probably the most sustainable plan for planning our growth. It is consistent with state law, AB 32, net energy zero requirement by 2020 for all new homes to be net energy zero, and with AB 375. So these things will impact us anyway, and we should plan for it accordingly. With no new net trips, I think this will not necessarily stifle or predetermine what happens, but give us an opportunity to improvise and to innovate how we move forward with a livable, sustainable city with a higher quality of life, where we reduce the impacts of the car and our dependencies on that. In short, I think those concepts will bring us to a more livable, sustainable Palo Alto with a higher quality of life, healthy residents. And I think those are the guidelines that we should include in any one of the 4 options. Thank you.
Thank you. Adina Levin, to be followed by Elaine Wong, to be followed by Nielsen Buchanan.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, and staff. Adina Levin with Friends of Caltrain. And I'm going to start with the technical comment and then make some policy and related comments. The technical comment in talking about traffic impact, I heard a few people talk about level of service, and as you probably heard, the state, according to a bill passed last year, has a direction to move away from level of service. So by the time we get even to the first specific plan or project under this EIR, it will be using most likely vehicle miles traveled per capita instead of LOS as the main CEQA metric. I heard some staff earlier that there's going to be parallel analysis of that, and so I urge you to consider that that's going to be the metric going forward. Are we reducing vehicle miles per capita? Which brings me to the concept of Vision Zero, which is especially with regard to trips and vehicle miles traveled, which is really exciting as a vision. And I have similar thoughts, as mentioned by several of the speakers, in terms of seeing Vision Zero is a vision, not a policy. And so if it is a vision overlay over different scenarios, that could be used in the same way that Mountain View used looking in its change areas and saying how much can we reduce trips and vehicle miles traveled. So instead of having it as a constraint up front, have it as a vision and then look at each area to see what can we do to reduce that carbon impact and trip impact. And it would pertain to any of the mix and match options that involve concentrating land use change around transit to increase the use of public transit, walking, and biking, and to increase that mix of uses so that people need to do less driving. And speaking of that, there are concerns in the community about quality of life and transportation, and I urge the city to address that directly with focus on design and trip reduction rather than reducing the development. And I urge you to listen to the younger people who say, I walk, I bike, I take transit, I do not want to be driving. We shouldn't let the fears based on the mid-20th century model that many of us have grown up with to direct the future. Listen to the younger people who are saying how they want to live and how they want to get around. Thank you.
Thank you. Elaine Wong, to be followed by Nielsen Buchanan, to be followed by Ian.
Thank you for your attention to this really great direction forward. I think you've heard a lot from a younger demographic today, which is particularly heartening. I think I want to spend a few minutes to talk a little bit about yet a younger demographic. As many of you know, I have 2 little girls. They are 9 months and 2 years and 10 months. In 2030, which is the time horizon for this plan, they will be 17 and 19 respectively. Hopefully, wonderful young women who will continue to love Palo Alto and will grow up and see maybe a slightly different version of Palo Alto than a lot of us have seen in years past. I hope and these are just some hopes for my girls, but but I think they're worth mentioning tonight. I hope that they find downtown and Cal Avenue socially vibrant and intellectually stimulating. I want them to see these two areas as beautiful, inviting, with gorgeous streetscapes and public spaces for them to play in. I want them to have access to restaurants and cafes, everything from haute cuisine to ethnic street food. I want them to experience venues with live music, comedy, improv, and intellectual lectures. Dignitaries and intellectuals from all over our region. I think a lot of people have talked about the housing and the jobs, so I won't belabor that point. When I was in high school, I grew up in Cupertino. Everybody hung out at the mall. And I rode my bike down Stevens Creek Boulevard very perilously to get to my tennis lessons, to get to summer school, whatever. I hope when my girls grow up that El Camino Real becomes a mall in the sort of pedestrian, in the Esplanade sense, that it is beautiful, that it is safe, that it is full of interesting things for them to do. At some point, I do hope that they learn to drive a car. I'm not discounting the car as a form of transportation in the next coming years, but I hope they have access to a lot of safe, convenient transportation options so I never have to schlep them around town to anything. And I hope I don't have to schlep them around the region to anything either. I hope that they grow up with great community facilities. Again, it would be great to see us connecting people in different spots, bringing them together, bringing people together of all walks of life, all ages, all backgrounds, all educational strata. I hope that they live in a Palo Alto that has chosen to be environmentally conscious, reduces its footprint by setting the right land use, transportation, and housing policies in tandem, integrated. I hope that they live in a Palo Alto that reduces those impacts by using resources wisely, by reducing per capita water use, per capita energy use, per capita gas and other resource uses. And finally, and I know many of you have children who, I'm out, I hope that they can always call Palo Alto home so that when they leave, they can come back and pursue their interests here for eternity. Thanks.
Nielsen Buchanan to be followed by Ian, to be followed by Sealern Reddy.
Let me address the comp plan and the process by which Palo Alto has been unfolding itself in the last 3 or 4 years. Something is not quite right one way or the other because we now have an accumulated traffic, parking, and now what is obvious 3 or 4 city political mess coming. It'll play its way out in this next election, and I predict it'll be playing itself out to the next election in 2016. So this is really a good time to stop, look, and listen. Something is fundamentally wrong, and one way I am really confident that we could get some movement off the stasis is to engage in a really creative scenario planning process. It's really hard for government to act in extremely divergent ways to create brainstormed ideas. It can set off panic in all sectors of Palo Alto, but this is really a good time to tighten up a couple of scenarios. I'll just throw one out that I've talked to some of the younger citizens about over the last few months. Why not have a next generation scenario? They're asking for relief in the type of housing, cost. If there's a way for that to be unfolded, if there's a way to bring down prices of houses and rental, then that scenario ought to be explored. Double the allocation of money to the consultants. You're going to need to double the staff for Hillary to do a good job on that type of scenario planning. Otherwise, we're going to muddle through and not have anything really to fall back on that addresses the future. It may or may not be possible to address the next generation needs. I don't really know, but somebody creatively ought to do it the same way private business would be doing it, the same way Google would be attacking their next business challenges. So I could go on and on about other things. I don't think we're ready to adopt the elements in the new comp plan. I think we need to have the scenario planning first. I've gone through it as best I can to the different elements, just looking at it from a matrix of neighborhood quality. And there's just real gaps in the contradictions of goals, policies, and programs that could be tightened up. Don't rush into that, and as I understand it, those elements still are going to be flexible. But some sort of scoping of whatever we want Palo Alto to be can be done, and it is through the really aggressive and more resource scenario planning. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian, and I apologize I cannot pronounce your last name. Are you still here this evening? Okay. I didn't even try. So, C, Reddy, and to be followed by Monica Arima, to be followed by Stephanie Munoz.
I think we have a great city here. I think this is a heaven on earth. I think let's not screw it up. Let's freeze everything. As it is, it's really good. There are transportation issues, things like that. We should work with smart people. There are a lot of smart people. We should encourage a lot of innovative approaches, like a tube in London. Go look at it and how we can transport people around. Go to Stanford. You know, they have a tennis game and all that. They put 20, 30,000 people in their trees. So why couldn't we do that every day? We could just try. So somebody has to give in, you know. They use our facilities to transport 100,000 people every time we have a football game. So I'm just food for thought, right? So we should solve those kinds of problems. Feel proud of it we're here, not whine about it. We all have, people that own properties have a 40% increase in their value. Granted that they don't get that money until something else happens to them. So they need to be a little generous to the people. So it's a market, supply and demand. So they need to be a little nicer to the young people. You know, I saw about 4 or 5 people that came in 2010 and 2012, and their rents have gone up. So it's going to settle down. You know, we're not going to have 40% growth every day. So I think it's a beautiful city. We just need to be nice to each other, not have this renters and homeowners and you know, people that work here, don't work here. This is one community. You know, we're just in passing. You know, tomorrow somebody else is going to take over. We're not going to live here forever. And what else? I like the little differences in our community. College Terrace is beautiful. You know, there's nothing that can replace College Terrace. I'd like to keep it that way. I want to go to the dish and come back and relax, and a lot of children moving around. There is nothing like this city. I've been in Newport, I've been in El Segundo. El Segundo has 12,000 people when I lived there, and they had 98,000 people that worked there. So this isn't a big deal. You know, we need to solve this problem for innovation. Tomorrow it's going to be San Francisco. Let them go there. You know, we don't need them here. We don't need to beg them to come here. So I think we just need to be positive, and as I said, be considerate to humanity. And what else? And it's free market, so let's not have more rules. You know, we have enough rules. Let's not build tall buildings. Get rid of them. You know, if you have plans, and be open, not hush hush and some. Yeah, I guess what I hear, the complaints are that people are finding out later on that, oh, this building plan was not this is more this. So let's be open. What's wrong with that? I think we can handle that. Thank you.
Thank you. Monica Young Arima, to be followed by Stephanie Munoz, to be followed by Doria Suma.
Good evening, council members. I'm Monica Young Arima. I lived in Professorville. I lived in Palo Alto for more than 20 years, and my husband was here since the 1960s, and he never left since Stanford. We live very close to downtown, and I just wanted to remind everybody, including the comprehensive plan, whatever plan that you have, make sure that you put parking as the great issues, because whatever we have before doesn't work. The workers of the downtown area overflow all the way to Embarcadero. And we have been addressing the issues for the last 2-3 years with the city, and there is no plan for any solutions as of today. A study has been done by the city to prove that the parking overflow during the week, Monday to Friday, from morning time to afternoon time is 100% occupied, most of the area. I'm talking about Emerson, Ramona, Bryan, Waverly, all the way down to almost to Embarcadero. So whatever the plan that in the future, I really like the comprehensive plan to address that. And the other thing that I wanted to talk about is the planned community zoning. I know it's sort of on hold, and I know that it's sort of maybe gradually coming back. And I wanted to say that that is really not a good kind of thing to have, because it seems to me that a lot of times it's being taken advantage of. It's really not putting the parking in place under the whatever transportation study that they have whenever they put that on. I'll give you an example. The Channing House have an improvement of over 10,000 square feet. There's not one single parking added to the plan when it was approved. I came here and talked about it, and the subject was not even discussed. So I'm really concerned, whatever it is. I support the new generation move to Palo Alto should have, affordable kind of housing for them. High density housing in a university area, I supported that. High rises, I supported that. You could have very nice looking high rises, not necessarily bad looking ones, to be in the city to accommodate that. I mean, you go to a lot of European countries, you can see all the buildings that are high and tall. You don't feel that it's bad, So tall and high does not equal to bad. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie Munoz, to be followed by Doria Suma, to be followed by our final speaker, Tim Gray.
Good evening, council members. As you know, I'm Stephanie Munoz. We're finishing, or almost finishing, a discussion which began a couple of years ago with Council Member Klein's talk at Ming's, in which he spoke of the transformation of Palo Alto from a model town, a town like Reston, or a town that was planned out in the beginning, to something different. Maybe better, maybe not better. He pointed out that where the Palo Alto, the model town, had residential districts and a commercial district and a shopping district, and there was a possibility that there might be some kind of factory down toward the bay where there was space, and there would be some kind of increase in residences up toward the hills on the Stanford property. Well, Stanford changed that. The industrial park, starting with Xerox, went in on the Stanford lands, which would have had the increase in housing. The Arrastra plan for the 1,000 houses was put in the trash can because many Palo Altans really wanted to look at the beautiful hillsides. Less housing, lots less housing. Supply and demand is a pretty elementary concept. The value of the houses, the value of the land goes up if there's less of it. And we've been coping with that. I don't suppose you'd say coping. It's, by many, has been seen as a wonderful idea. The value is much greater. But I'd like to point out three little things that I think you should think about as we cope with the growth. I think growth is a good idea at this point because we have too many offices, too many for the number. First of all, Stanford has to do its share of housing. That hospital is 1,000 low-paid workers coming in, and there's no place to put them, and Palo Alto is going to be a doormat for wherever they have to go. Stanford has to put in housing for them. It's all very well to have more housing for poor people. Okay, that's good. What I think you mainly have to do is not evict people from the housing that they have. And I'm thinking particularly of Buena Vista. Here are people, they own their houses, they should have been zoned trailer park when they came in, and they weren't. And I think that should be corrected. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Yes.
I just want to say that Ms. Munoz has not accurately described my speech.
Okay. All right. Doria Suma, you have 3 minutes, and then Tim Gray.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll be brief tonight. There's been a lot of speakers. I'm also a longtime resident. I realize as people say how long they've lived here, I've lived here almost 30 years. So I would like to submit that instead of proceeding with developing an entirely new comp plan, that we stay up to date with our housing element as required by law and make other minor changes to the current comp plan, reducing redundancy, removing obsolete programs, updating where necessary. I don't really believe that the scenarios fully represent what residents of Palo Alto want, and I worry about moving forward with an EIR and wasting resources when the scenarios are vague, there's not a lot of data provided, and I think it's premature. I would also like to say that staff and others have said that there would be very little change to most parts of Palo Alto. I disagree with that. I think everybody lives in the whole city. You just don't live in your one little neighborhood. And one specific problem with all 4 of these scenarios is that R1 is the only residential zone that is going to be preserved and protected. We have 2 other low-density residential zones that are primarily single-family homes, which is R2 and RMD. And I think we should be, I would take it a step further, and I think we should be protecting the residential experience for all residents as it's and not degrading it from the point it is now. And I really think it's absolutely necessary for all low-density residential, but I would like to go a step further and say that I think people that live in higher density residential zones deserve the same consideration. So those are my comments for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, and Tim Gray. Unless do I have any more? There's no more cards.
Hi, I'm Tim Gray, and thank you for the opportunity to talk to you. I wanted to talk more about the principles that maybe we could keep in mind as we conduct our discussion and without going into the detail. And the principle is that the comprehensive plan has been kind of a contract or agreement or a constitution as such with the citizens and the people who live here. And so we have to make sure that we take an inventory of what those rights are under that historical comprehensive plan and make sure that those rights are not taken away from those people. And maybe we should start with an inventory of what housing opportunities we do have within the existing plan. For example, in my quarter-acre lot, I'm allowed to build I think a 900-foot, 2-bedroom, 2-bath home, and I'm not sure that that housing unit is included in the potential inventory to meet the ABAG requirement. And I would encourage us that we make sure that we give every opportunity that is within the existing zoning to the residents and the landowners that are here before we start minting new opportunities. And we want to make sure that we don't end up with changes that are seen as by the residents as giveaways, meaning every time we offer a new density, that's new value we're giving to a property. And that new density and that value, that needs to be returned to the community and not just gifted to the landowner. And so we need to be very thoughtful in the way we do increase the growth. And then we need to make sure that there's an alignment of opportunities with responsibilities. And as we are growing up and increasing density, if we have to, that new offices, which create jobs, are then responsible for creating new housing. And that new housing that creates demand for school, sets money aside for schools, sets money aside for sewers, sets money aside for streets, sets money aside for a larger water plant. Because oftentimes we think of giving this new density, it doesn't have a cost, but it really does have a cost to the whole community that ultimately will have to pay. So we need to have a real fair economic equation as we do meter out new growth opportunities so that that new owner bears that cost and it's not handed off to our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything that you would like to say before we go forward with any? Okay. Thank you. And it is about, I think it's 10:30. 10:25. And I had set aside the rest of this time for us to start our questions for these scenarios, but not necessarily to start to carve them out, but just what are the possibilities if we can do that this evening. Otherwise, we can just take it up tomorrow. Wednesday. I'm sorry. Thank you. Almost tomorrow. So if there's
just questions, no
just
comments,
questions
right?
about these scenarios, what does it mean? What is it that you would be looking for data on, that type of thing, and then on Wednesday actually have that kind of much more narrow.
Well, I'd like to see us to end at 11. I don't really think we should.
Well, we also have another item after this.
And I'm skeptical of our ability to narrow anything in our comments.
Am I hearing then that there would be a suggestion to maybe take up our questions on Wednesday and then we could go right into
I'll make that suggestion.
All right.
I'll second it.
It was a
suggestion, it wasn't a motion, but
so we would
I'll say my early approval.
to end this now and then to pick up our questions and go right into our deliberations on Wednesday. So why don't we? Do I have to have a motion to do that, or can we just go ahead and?
I think we would like a motion for continuance to Wednesday at 7 p.m.
Okay.
So moved. Second.
All right, we've got a motion to continue till 7 p.m. The public hearing is still open. We will pick up with public comment for those that have not already given us public comment, and then we'll go straight to council. Thank you. Let's vote.
Thank you.
Can I just want to speak quickly,
I'm sorry.
and because I didn't talk at all earlier, and just say thank you to everybody who participated today. On a broad spectrum of viewpoints on the issues that we're dealing with today, I really appreciate everybody coming out, whether they were speaking or just observing. This is an incredibly important conversation that we're having, and y'all participating is huge for our community, so thank you very much to everybody.
Yes, and we put the seats in brand new for them, too.
That's
so
right. I hope they were comfortable.
we're having a first night. Okay, let's go ahead and vote to continue. All right, and that motion carries unanimously, and we will see you on Wednesday night. And so the final item for tonight is the implementation of dry year conservation measures. After the staff presentation, I will entertain a motion to adopt a resolution, Attachment A, implementing outdoor water use restrictions in compliance with the State Water Resources Board's July 15, 2014 emergency drought regulations. So staff, I'm going to turn it over to you when you're ready.
Did it escape? The escape button didn't work? There you go.
Maybe you just have to close it.
Close it down. Go up there in the right-hand corner. No, there, close it. There you go. All right. Find yours.
Me neither.
Action item number, remember?
Number 22.
Is it the one up there at the top? That should be it. Yay! Yes, please. Go for it.
Hi, I'm Valerie Fong, Utilities Director, and I have with me our Compliance Manager, Deborah Lloyd, who will be giving the overview of this requirement by law. I also have with me the Utilities Communications Manager, Catherine Elvert, who will also be present to answer any questions.
Good evening, Mayor Shepherd and council members. So I'll be giving you an update on our current water supply situation and Palo Alto's response to date. Then I'll walk through the emergency water use regulations recently passed by the State Water Resources Control Board. The staff's recommendations for complying with these new regulations. What I'm not going to cover in this presentation is an enforcement plan. These emergency regulations came at us pretty quickly, and staff is currently working on a proposal for enforcement that may be back before the council at the end of this month. Without preempting that work that we're doing this month, I'll add that staff recognizes the accomplishments of the community to date and is not looking for a revenue-raising program through enforcement, but rather anticipates a plan that recognizes the water situation in the state and strives to achieve efficient use of our water resources. So first of all, Palo Alto gets 100% of its potable or clean drinking water from the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission's regional water system, also known as SFPUC, or the Hetch Hetchy system. So while Governor Brown called for a 20% statewide water use reduction earlier in the year, our supplier, SFPUC, requested a 10% voluntary reduction. I'll also note that the Santa Clara Valley Water District has called for a 20% reduction. Now, while they do not supply the city's drinking water, the city is geographically located within the district, and they do report on our water reduction accomplishments. And we'll note that Palo Alto is actually one of 2 cities in the district that has achieved the highest reduction since February of this year. Then more recently, the state adopted emergency water use restrictions, which is the impetus for the resolution before you. But keeping in mind that our supplier continues to request just a 10% voluntary reduction. So how has Palo Alto responded? The city's utilities department has stepped up communications and conservation programs, and the Palo Alto community has responded with a 17% reduction in water use compared to the 2013 usage, so well in excess of the 10% voluntary called for. As I just mentioned, this 17% reduction in Palo Alto puts the city at the top of conservation efforts in the Santa Clara Valley Water District. Doing their part, the city facilities have also reduced water use by 26%. A quick plug for our water efficiency rebates and services. Many rebates for landscaping water use efficiency have doubled, including lawn replacement and grey water reuse. Services such as water reports to our residents and businesses are helping customers analyze their water use, and audits and educational materials are helping our customers identify water-saving actions. Just to take a graphic look at what we've achieved so far in the city. So we see this blue line. This is the cumulative water use for 2013. The red line is our trajectory of water use in 2014. And these, the dotted lines are reductions of 10% and 20%. So as you can see, we're kind of tracking along closer to the 20% to date. Okay, so back to the reason we're here, the State Water Resources Control Board recent action from July 15th. So on the 15th, the board adopted emergency water use regulations that apply to all individuals in the state, as well to urban water suppliers. So from July 28th, and that's a correction from what we have in the report, because when we put that together, we were anticipating an August 1st implementation date, but they moved a bit quicker. So from the 28th, individuals are expected to stop watering of outdoor landscapes that cause excess runoff, using a hose to wash a motor vehicle unless hose is fitted with automatic shut-off nozzle, washing down driveways and sidewalks, and using potable water in a fountain or decorative water feature unless that water is recirculated. Note that these prohibitions are on potable water and not on recycled water, and there are exceptions for health and safety needs. Failure to abide by these new restrictions could result in fines to individuals of up to $500 a day. For the urban water suppliers, which includes the city's water utility, we are required to activate water shortage contingency plans to a level that implements mandatory restrictions on irrigation. We are also required to give monthly reports to the board on water use, the first of which is due on the 15th of this month. Failure to comply with a state water board order by a water agency is subject to up to $10,000 a day penalties. We will note that Palo Alto already has restrictions on water use in its municipal code. These mirror two of the state's new restrictions on runoff and use of hoses without a shut-off nozzle. And the city's restriction on the hose use actually applies to more uses than the state's regulation, which only addresses washing of vehicles. We also have additional restrictions that are, as yet are not mandated by the state. So the proposed use. So there's somewhat of a challenge for Palo Alto to respond to the state's emergency regulations. The city's municipal code and the 2010 Urban Water Management Plan contemplated mandatory cutbacks from our supplier, the SFPUC, which would then trigger a declaration by the council of a local water shortage emergency, which would then trigger reenactment of further water use restrictions in the municipal code. As the city is not actually facing a local water shortage emergency, staff is proposing a modified program that complies with the state's emergency regulations while maintaining your discretion to respond to local conditions. Indeed, our water management plan recognizes the need for flexibility in responding to particular conditions. So the proposed actions are responsive to the irrigation restriction requirement and adopt the additional restrictions on individuals' use. So the actions we're proposing is that first, we step up enforcement of the existing municipal code, the restrictions on water use portions, and then add 3 new restrictions for the duration of the state's emergency regulations. So from stage 2 of the city's water shortage contingency plan, we would limit irrigation of landscapes to before 10 a.m. or after 6 p.m., with exceptions for drip irrigation, soaker hoses, and hand watering. Prohibit application of potable water to driveways and sidewalks, and require recirculating systems if potable water is used in a decorative feature. And again, all of these prohibitions are against the use of potable water, not recycled water.
Could I do just a point of information on this? What is an ornamental landscape? Truly, I mean,
we're presumably like not, what do you call it, edible.
Is my
landscape.
lawn an ornamental landscape?
Lawn, shrubs, trees.
So anything that probably is outside our homes is ornamental.
Except presumably what they're accepting there is if you have a vegetable garden or edible garden. I presume that's the exception there. So the next steps for staff, if council adopts the proposed resolution, will of course to continue the outreach and conservation programs. Then we are putting together an interdepartmental drought team to coordinate the city's communication in response to the current and future drought conditions and regulations. And one of the first tasks of this team will be to coordinate on the enforcement plan for the existing annual restrictions. On that subject, utility staff is working with legal to determine whether additional actions and authorizations are required for enforcement. The state board has said they want the first monthly report starting this month, but as yet they haven't actually given us a report template, so we're not exactly sure what data they're going to be after. but we have already started cataloging reports of water waste, and of course we track water supplies and sales. And finally, our recommendation is that Council adopt a resolution implementing outdoor water use restrictions in compliance with the State Water Resources Control Board's July 15th emergency drought regulations. Thank you.
Thank you. I have one speaker on this item. It's Brian Schmidt from the Santa Clara Valley Water District. Brian, you have 3 minutes. I see.
Thank you. Good evening, Brian Schmidt. I am the Vice Chair of Santa Clara Valley Water District Board, and I represent Palo Alto and some other cities in Santa Clara County at the board. And although I suspect you don't need my encouragement here tonight, I am here to support the staff resolution and urge you to adopt that resolution. As the report indicates, the governor has called for a 20% reduction. In a sentence, I think what we can say is Palo Alto has done well, but well does not keep you from doing even better. And you have an opportunity to do better. This resolution can help make that happen. One thing I'd say is, as I stand here before you, my colleague, Director Dennis Kennedy, is speaking to the Gilroy City Council. And while Palo Alto has done well, our county as a whole needs to do better. We're at 17% here in Palo Alto. The county is around 12%. We need 20%. So to the extent that my colleague can say to his city council, why aren't you keeping up with Palo Alto? Then this is something that can help out to compete on a basis of who does the best job. So I think that this is a welcome step to move forward. We're trying to assist you as well. The Water District voted recently to hire 5 to 10 water waste inspectors that will help identify and educate people who are wasting water. And the inspectors are meant to aid, not to replace your own efforts. So I see in the staff report you're talking about potential funding needs, and the good news is we're going to try and help. The bad news is we're not going to reduce your need to put in resources in that level, but we can help make it happen more efficiently. And as I've heard your staff say in the past, we have cooperated very extensively on water conservation with the district. One thing I've had a conversation with your staff is that the $4 per square foot landscape conversion rebate, highest in the country, according to what I've heard from Palo Alto staff. Half of that is from you, half of that is from us. And there's more that can be done with these signs that we now have. The brown is the new green that people can put up on their lawns, showing when your lawn is brown, it's not brown because you don't care, it's brown because you do care for the people around you and for your community. These signs are free. Just call up the district, 408-630-2000. We'll come and bring them out. Also, this bucket you can put in your shower and catch your extra water and then use it to either fill up the toilet tank or take it out to water your plants, which I've been doing for quite a while now. So again, I want to encourage you to take these steps, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, I just have one question. You sure that's not Jerry Brown running for office? So it's
Yeah, we're getting some questions about that. We presented this to John Laird, Secretary of Resources, when we opened our reverse osmosis water recycling facility, and he was very happy to see that as well. Okay. But it's for our lawns.
Great. We've got another speaker, and then if we have questions, I'm sure you'll still be here. So yes. Stephanie Munoz, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, council members. I just want to remind you of 3 things that you know very well already, and just a reminder. The water supply is pretty much fixed, and the water supply that was adequate for, say, 40,000 people to have lawns and long showers and water elements is not adequate for twice as many people, is it? The second thing is these improvements in the use of water are paid for by the water users. That's everybody that lives in town. There's no way of getting around using water. You have to use water. You could get away without using electricity. Conceivably, you cannot get away without using water. When you give $4 a square foot for people to put in brick or flagstone or something instead of a lawn, that is paid for by the residents who are using the water, whether or not they can take advantage of it, because it does cost something for the people to do the replacement. Something that has, unless it's changed recently, that I found rather dismaying is you can accidentally run up an enormous water bill if you have a leak. And other municipalities that do not own the water company have an arrangement for that. They will forgive you some degree what happens when you have a leak, because they realize that there's nothing that you can do about it. I mean, after the fact, you can certainly repair the leak, and certainly must repair the leak, but it can run you, a couple of $100 in addition to repairing the leak. And I think it's good that the city does own the water company. I think that's a good thing, but they should follow the lead of the less advanced people and make some provision for accidents. And just wanted to remind you that being able to count how much water people are using amounts to as much as half of the cost that you're asking people to pay, as because there's a base charge whether you use a cup full or a swimming pool full. So I think you need to remember these things before patting us on the back for the good work that we're doing. And, well, of course, it's good that Palo Alto is able to cut down by 17%. That's good. That's very good. No question about it. And but it comes at a cost. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take this up for motion. Councilmember Price?
Yes, thank you for your presentation. I think I found the answer, which is a question related to enforcement and what are our resources to do that. And here you mentioned that it would be, staff anticipates additional costs covered by the water fund reserves. So you haven't really detailed what you think that might be, but as this, if we take the next step here and as this rolls forward, you're absolutely sure it can be absorbed within that, is my assumption, from the way you've stated it in the staff report. Great. And this would be the additional staffing as long as needed, is my assumption, in terms of enforcement?
Yeah, it could be additional staffing or some overtime, correct.
Councilmember Holman?
I was going to make the motion to adopt the resolution implementing outdoor water use restrictions in compliance with the State Water Resources Control Board's July 15, 2014 emergency drought regulations.
All right, you've got your second. Would you like to speak to this?
I don't think I need to take the time to do that. I think it's pretty straightforward. Palo Alto is doing well. We can do better, and I think these are reasonable and rational approaches to adopt.
I'm going to pick Councilmember Schmidt as your seconder. Would you like to speak to this?
Yeah, just a quick question. Thanks for the data and the information. Have we found any substantial discrepancies by type of users, heavy users, residents, commercial, multifamily? Is there any indication that some are doing better than others?
Oh, in terms of their reductions?
Yes.
We could probably spend a fair amount of time trying to analyze that, but the 17% is sort of an across-the-board community reduction.
Good. Yeah, I was just thinking as we go down the road, if there are gaps, that maybe another round focusing on those that are lagging might be helpful.
Thank you. I see no more lights. I would just like to make one comment before we vote. And at the NCPA meeting, I kept asking, I've heard there's an El Nino coming. That means we're going to have rains. I'm hearing from our experts that they have no idea if anything's going to change. And there's a heightened experience. There's a concern that there's going to be an even much more prolonged drought. So I think these measures are nice starts, but I think that we actually might have to look at even more deep cuts as things go forward, knowing what our reservoirs look like right now. So with that, let's go ahead and vote. And that motion carries with Councilmember Klein and Schmid voting. Voting. All right, it carries unanimously. And now we just have our final item tonight, which is council member comments and, I'm sorry, what it's called. Council member questions, comments, and reports. And I see Council member Scharf.
So I just thought after the city manager's comments that we should agendize a discussion on the YMCA issue. And so see if there's anything we can do about that.
I'll second that. Do we have?
That's all we need.
I think we've got some consensus here. So, and it looks like the city attorney is nodding her head. Thank you. Excellent. Okay, Councilmember Holman.
Thank you for that one, Councilmember Scharf. I also would ask that in order to provide better council and public understanding that the City Hall remodel of ground floor, mezzanine, and second floors return to council as an action item, to have a staff report that provides it with better clarity the outcomes of project components and respective costs, whether all aspects of the project contracts have been awarded, and why the contract was awarded to a single respondent, understanding that only one bidder responded, and that this be agendized for the soonest possible council agenda, preferably within the next couple of weeks.
I'll support that.
I'll second it.
Could you just clarify again the subject?
Do you want me to repeat all that? The short version is just the award of the contracts for ground floor, mezzanine, and second floor. If we could just get better clarity and better vetting of those issues and costs and such, so that we can have better understanding in public and have better vetting. We can have a better vetting in public of that issue.
Do you want an information report?
A council agenda item.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to do that. We are in construction, though. Just so we're clear.
Understood.
Yeah, so I mean,
This is
just
to provide
so long
better
as-
understanding.
Yeah, and I mean, so my understanding is that, you're not talking about a reevaluation of the contract. I mean, that's already been approved and is being delivered upon, but a discussion about, but a broader, more robust discussion about the renovations and that kind of thing.
Well, I'm actually looking to the city attorney because this isn't agendized, so I don't think we can actually discuss it.
Understand what the issue is. We'll bring it back.
And I can type it up, what I said, Jim, and provide it to you.
That you're talking about.
Okay, if there's no more, Councilmember Price.
Yes, this is a tiny bit off topic. I wanted to report I attended a planning meeting at Kfar Rupin, which is a kibbutz in Israel. It was conducted in Hebrew, but I had a friend who I was visiting who translated for me. But the issues were parking, setback, site plan, traffic, and landscape and buffering. And so I participated, and it was the same kind of discussion. It was very interesting. The last time I was on this kibbutz was as a volunteer 42 years ago.
Councilmember Berman.
So I had the pleasure last Friday, of giving a congratulatory graduation speech to the graduating cohort of the Youth Community Service Summer of Service program. This is a program that they run 4 different 2-week programs every summer. 35 of our residents from Palo Alto, East Palo Alto, Menlo Park participate, and they do service activities every day, working with the homeless, working with the elderly, working on environmental issues, and I think this year they were also working on healthcare issues. And it's just so amazing to see. These are 6th graders through 9th graders spending 2 weeks of their summer going out and providing service to the community. It was fantastic. An organization or a program run by YCS, and this is my 2nd year talking to them. So fun to see how much our young folks care about the community, and it's very uplifting.
Okay, with that, this meeting is adjourned.
not being able to afford that. And there was a real